Good evening and welcome to the April 1st meeting of the Richmond Selectboard. Happy spring, happy Easter. Welcome Adam Wood, first in-person meeting. Thank you. Adam joined us remotely from Florida 2 weeks ago, right?
Florida. Yeah.
Welcome back. And Jay is joining us from, I believe, Bermuda. You're muted.
That is correct. Bermuda. Can you hear me okay?
I can. I imagine the sky is a little brighter there than it is up here.
It's a little overcast.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jay.
That was heartfelt.
Before we begin, would anybody care to make a public statement? Mary?
Yes. Once again, showtime. Hello.
Hello.
Congratulations.
Oh, thank you, Mary.
Glad to see you. A little profound for me. In exactly 1 month, I will be the exact age my mother was when she died. So my time is a lot more precious. So forgive me if I don't stay for the whole meeting. I'm going to hit on a few things. There might be some overlap with what's on the agenda, but again, forgive me for that. Allow it. I talked with Pete Goslin some time ago about electric trucks and the capacity that they might have for our town. And he said that each truck would require 2 batteries and each battery is 8,000 pounds. So 16,000 pounds before any payload is on. Our roads cannot sustain this kind of weight. My husband was watching a news program recently and he said, oh, come look. A field of acres and acres and acres of solar panels in Texas were all damaged by hail and required to be replaced. So something else to think about. VYCC, I noticed, is on the program tonight for something else, but please bear in mind that when VYCC first became a nonprofit, they engaged in something called payment in lieu of taxes, and they had a fixed fee that they paid every year. And it has been, I guess, 7 or 8 years now that they haven't paid the town of Richmond a dime. And I think time has come for that to change. So the future of the town center is on your list for tonight. Some years ago, maybe 8-10 years ago, Breadloaf Construction did a full analysis of this building and the library, and they came up with some recommendations on maintenance. And since the bond issue did not pass, that needs to be re-examined, please and thank you. In the meantime, the town center, just like vehicles, needs to have a maintenance schedule for each component. Painting rooms must be done at least, paint maybe 2 rooms a year to keep up with things. The rugs should be shampooed at least once a year. For the future of this building, please consider leasing it to someone else for a 30 or 50-year lease. Let that entity be responsible for updates, still with compliance with zoning. And the idea of a new town center, I think, is important. A new town center designed by the people that are going to use the structure, not by an architect who doesn't know jack about using a building. And that's the truth. If you've ever seen a hospital room that an architect designed, it's difficult to get a stretcher in and out. So a new town center can be had, and you can get a 40-year mortgage, which will lessen the impact. In Europe, France specifically, they have 100-year mortgages because the price of everything is $1 million to start practically. So a new town center built out of the floodplain, and only in executive session will I discuss the real estate. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mary.
Time is limited. That was it. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Nope, you're doing.
Okay. Hearing none, seeing none, moving on. Josh Board, any additions, deletions, or modifications to tonight's agenda?
David, I think we all got a note about a fire department event on the 27th. I thought we just mentioned that. And maybe as we just did in the Water Sewer Commission, talk about people interested in going. And then I sent you something about railroad ties that maybe we can take offline and potentially come back with.
Okay. You want to put that on a future agenda? The railroad
Maybe
ties?
let's talk about it in between and just to be transparent, this is the stacks of creosote railroad ties that I've seen in various places. Creosote is a known carcinogen. The railroad basically kind of goes, whatever, we're doing what we're doing. But from simple research, it would appear that some states, towns, municipalities have compelled railroads to take them away and dispose of them properly somewhere. As
One of
opposed
my-
to sitting there.
One of my many hats is I'm also a rail fan, and I know it used to be common practice for railroads when they did work in the right of way to just leave the ties in the right of way and let nature take their course, which with creosote impregnated ties takes a while. And as you alluded to, the creosote doesn't just disappear, it leaches into the soil. Mary?
On that same note, I brought that up.
What's going on?
I brought that up at a meeting and I was told, oh, you can't do anything because it's federal. Well, the railroad is federal, but you know, if they can hold me account for something, then they need to be held to account. And there's a huge stack of them in Jonesville. I've noticed that one in particular, but yes, exactly. Thank you. Thank you, Bart.
I know when they changed hands.
4 or 5 years ago, they did a lot of.
John, whenever you unmute for some reason, it's causing a tremendous echo in the room. Oh, you're here. That's why it's causing an echo. Okay, I was like, why is it causing an echo? Because you're here, please stay muted. Thank you. I mean, you can speak, but just their device muted.
When the railroad changed hands a few years ago, they did do a lot of right-of-way improvements, and also right before Hurricane Irene, 2011, they went to welded rail as part of the recovery. Yeah. So a lot of ties were left there then as well. Chris, I see you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Thank you. They do try to keep them on the rail line for as long as possible. But the only thing that I've ever been able to see them move them is sustained pressure from a municipality and having articles written in the press. They don't like the bad PR. So I would start down that road if you want them moved.
Thank you.
Good advice. Thanks, Chris. Any other comments before we move on? Okay, moving into tonight's warrant agenda. Consideration of approval of the Chittenden Solid Waste District fiscal year 25 budget. And Sarah, I see you're with us tonight. Are you ready to give your presentation?
Yes, absolutely. We also have Beth Parent from CSW.
And I just need somebody to let me share my screen. I'm
And
gonna drive.
Josh, if Beth could have permission to drive the screen there, she's just going to be great.
Yeah, she should be able to.
Thanks very much. I had some significant technology issues and connection issues in Bolton, so I don't want to repeat that. So I appreciate that. Again, my name is Sarah Reeves. I'm the Executive Director for CSWD, and we're here to present our fiscal 25 budget to you for consideration and hopefully approval. So this is a quick slide to kind of remind folks who we are, where we're located, and also to stress that in our revenue buckets, none of the revenue that we receive comes from any income tax, sales tax, or local property taxes, nor do we assess a municipal per capita fee. Some districts do, and that's a component of the revenue stream, but CSWD relies on user fees, tip fees, revenue from a solid waste management fee, and material and product sales. And based on feedback that I received from select boards and city councils over the years, they like to know, how are we doing? So this is from the last completed fiscal 23. And the tons generated, so all of the material generated within Chittenden County that is considered part of solid waste, so recycling, food scraps, construction, demolition, debris, general rubbish, special materials like batteries and things, that number did increase by just under 5,000 tons, about 4,500 tons. The amount diverted from landfill disposal also increased by about 44,000 tons. So we're doing a really great job at making sure that if we are increasing our generation, that we are at least diverting that from landfill. The goal is always to not generate as much. So that continues to be a focus of what we want to help folks to do, is to learn ways that they can to not generate as much waste in the first place. One of the things that is really exciting in this particular slide is in that tons diverted number, that is a very large number on the organics, that green 47,000, almost 48,000 tons. That is a big jump in how much we've been able to divert, we all have been able to divert from the landfill. There's still a ways to go. You can see we had about 31,000 that was disposed, but we had almost 10,000 tons more diverted between in previous years. That's really great news, so thank you. In our income stream, we're looking at income just under $16 million. And this is to show kind of where the big buckets of that income are. Tipping fees or user fees continue to be the largest chunk, largest wedge of that pie. And the sale of materials, that blue wedge, that tends to go up and down. And that is mostly the materials recycling facility revenue when we sell material that is sorted there. And we simply do not control that market. So as those revenues go up and down, the prices go up and down, so do our revenue for that particular sector. Some years it's over 20%, 25%. This year is looking to be hopefully more than 16, but we're budgeting 60. Next, please. And again, thought I would show kind of where the bulk of our expenses go. You can see that materials management continues to be the largest chunk of our overall expenses, and those are the fees that we pay to haulers to literally move material either to recycling, to secondary markets, to the landfill, to the transfer station, and it's also where we code the fee that we pay Casella to operate the materials recycling facility. I will point also to payroll expenses. That number as a percentage of expenses has been growing, and that is probably not a surprise to anyone in the room. Next, please. Our bottom line this year is a bit different than in the years past. You go back there, thanks. So, excuse me, we are showing a slight deficit in just under $300,000. And for the first time, again, if the budget goes according to planned, we will need to draw down slightly from our reserves. So you can see kind of where materials kind of going in and out of the different reserves. That 300,000 is likely to not materialize, and I'll talk about that in a moment. Next, please. So where are the biggest changes? Well, the revenue did not increase, or is not projected to increase by very much, just 3%, 3.5%. The expenses, again, are in double digits. The largest component of that is that equipment and fleet increase by 66%. Fully half of that increase is to manage the needs of the aging materials recycling facility. It is at the end of its useful life, and it is breaking down. Excuse me. So that is going to require a good amount of attention in this fiscal year just to keep it running. We hope to have the new MRF up and running in about 18 to 20 months, but this old MRF is going to cost us a bit more before she's ready to go. As I mentioned, the potential for a reserve fund draw, we would be looking to most likely tap the undesignated reserve. That is our unassigned and unrestricted reserve. But we always conservatively under and over budget in certain areas. Can I mention that materials recycling facility commodity revenues, so the price that we receive for plastics, paper, aluminum, tin, etc., that goes up and down. The first half of this current fiscal year, it was pretty depressed. It was the average revenue rate for that per ton was just under $60. And then came December, January, and February, and it's been up over $110. So we just simply can't plan super accurately for that. So we tend to hedge our bets. I do think that we will come in over our budgeted amount, but again, I want to conservatively budget there. We always tend to over budget slightly our wages and benefits, particularly if we're going to hire some new folks. We always budget them as if they're going to take the full boat on everything. So full family plan on benefits, and we rarely does that always pan out, but we have to budget that way, and that is that number keeps going up as the benefits and the healthcare packages keep going up. And if you want to note, for the community cleanup fund, we never fully expend that fund, and we want to. So we encourage our member towns and cities to use their funds every year. They renew every July, and they don't carry over anymore. But we'd love to help you use those funds for projects around town. You can work with your commissioner and they will be happy to help you spend that money. Next, please. The big change this year is to the solid waste management fee, and this is the fee that is charged to haulers when they bring Chittenden County generated trash for disposal, most of it going to the Coventry landfill. It is $27 per ton, and our board just adopted an ordinance change to increase that for the first time in 12 years to $30 a ton. The impact per household, if that were to be distributed across all households, is under 30 cents a month. The need for this increase this year is to help fund our closed landfill reserve, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. And again, I mentioned the materials recycling facility. We will be increasing our tip fee or the user fee to $90 per ton, and that is again to help support the need for equipment related expenses due to this aging infrastructure. We generally, this is also bringing the tip fee into the regional market rate, and we tend to, as a municipality, not want to increase our pricing throughout the year. Private MRF increases or decreases their prices each month. We have municipal customers, so we want to kind of keep that steady. We are again budgeting a very conservative average commodity revenue. That's what ACR stands for. We think we'll exceed that 75 a ton, but we want to be conservative. In our organics recycling facility, there's good news here. There is no tip fee increase at the organics recycling facility. We are looking at, again, conservatively budgeting our tons inbound. Again, we're still kind of struggling with material that is being diverted to the Casella packaging facility. We are actively looking for more tons to come in for compost, but that has been a struggle since they opened that plant a few years ago. We did increase our prices on our compost products, and those sales are strong. And then we are implementing a new contamination policy this July to help to improve the quality of the material coming in. It's really pretty good from folks who drop off food scraps at our drop-off centers, but there are some medium generators that are still struggling with some contamination issues. And the more that we can get out of the stream at the beginning, then the lower our costs will be for processing down the road, and we'll just have a better product. Next, please. Drop-off centers, again, good news here. No increases to bag prices at drop-off centers. I know some folks here use the Williston drop-off center occasionally. So we also added a new extra large bag. So we have now 5 bag sizes at our drop-off center. Next, please. So for the capital projects, we have been heavily investing in the organics recycling facility the past several years. We're closing out that investment this year. We are reconfiguring, redesigning our DOCs in Burlington and Milton. Again, the new MRF construction, again, hopefully we'll be awarding that contract in the next couple of months. We hope to break ground at the end of the summer, early fall. And then because of all the heavy rain events over the past few years, we are looking at our stormwater management areas in all of our facilities. So we're doing a comprehensive review of that, and most likely looking to try to beef those up over the next couple of years. And as I mentioned, the landfill post-closure reserve, we are in year 28 of a 30-year reserve fund, closure project. So that was anticipated. However, what was not anticipated needing to deal with PFAS and forever chemicals. So we don't know how much that's going to cost. So we're beefing up that reserve through investment revenue and through the additional solid waste management fee revenue. And as always, we hope that you will adopt our budget and authorize its adoption. And I would love to hear any questions that you may have regarding the process or the budget.
Thank you, Sarah. Lisa has a question. Lisa?
Sarah, what are the contaminants in the food scrap stream coming in? Like cutlery or something, or plastic or plates?
Great question. So a lot of the contaminants are things like milk cartons. That is a big contamination. So some schools are great and some schools need some help. So we do see that contaminants from cafeterias, and not just at schools, but other cafeteria loads. So milk cartons, maybe wrappers from like sandwiches or things like that. So that kind of plastic film is there's a lot of contaminants there. Every now and then, a load will come in and we'll have a couple of bags of trash just tossed in. We think that's clearly an error, so there's the ability for our folks to kind of talk to that hauler and see if they can help identify where that came from, so they can go back to their customer and say, hey, just make sure you don't put garbage in with your food scraps. But it does tend to be, things that maybe look like they might be compostable, so it looks like it might be a paper product, but it isn't. It's made of plastic. So a carton is a great example. It looks like it, should be papery and is maybe only wax covered, but it's actually multi-layered, multi-laminated, and it's just simply not food. Really, all we want in there is food.
Thank you, Sarah. Any other questions for Sarah? Any discussion? Are we ready for a motion? So I'd be looking for a motion to approve the Chittenden Solid Waste District fiscal year 23 budget, 25 budget.
I move to approve the Chittenden Solid Waste District FY 25 budget.
Thank you, Adam. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Lisa. So a motion made by Adam Wood, seconded by Lisa Miller. Any further discussion? Hearing none, seeing none, calling the motion to a vote. This is a motion to approve the Chittenden Solid Waste District fiscal year 25 budget. Please identify yourself and signify your vote.
Jay, I.
Adam, I.
Bard, aye.
Lisa, aye.
And David, I. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a good night.
Thank you. Are we ready to move on? Sounds like we are. Next on the agenda is the presentation of the Thompson Road, Huntington Road, Bridge Street, Cochran Road intersection with preferred alternatives and consideration of approval of a preferred design. Do we have the Transportation Committee here ready to present?
You do. You have
Okay,
John.
Chris?
You have John in person, and because I have a head cold, you have me at home.
Well, we had John in person. Here he comes. Okay, John is back in the room, so Chris, you and John can fight this one out.
All right. If I can get screen sharing,
You should be set to go.
okay. Let's see what I want to share. Apologies for share. Let's see what we get. I need to open up. All right. Now, the problem is, 1 second. John can do a quick tap shoe. All right. I think let's lift off now. Can you see that?
Yes.
Perfect. So this is a project, the Thompson Road, Huntington Road, Bridge Street, Cochran Road intersection that came on our radar screen fairly early on. This was probably the third project we began planning. And planning is really looking at a piece of transportation infrastructure that you want to improve. For this one, we wanted to improve it for pedestrians, bicyclists, and motorists. And we spent about 18 months looking at this. We had an initial consultant process with the Transportation Committee that ended up with 3 alternatives: a no-build, a roundabout, and a 4-way stop. We really chose the no-build at that particular time. The engineering firm then designed another alternative and included that in another report they were doing for the town. So we had the same consultants, VHB, look at this intersection. They did 3 designs, and we have selected 2 of their designs to bring forward to the select board this evening. Each of the designs that we're sending forward to you would achieve the purpose and need of the project, which is to increase the safety for those 3 user groups that I had mentioned earlier. A little bit about us. We were established in 2019. We work to implement the town plan as it relates to roads, sidewalks, paths, public transit, and services. We collaborate with the select board, other town committees, the Richmond Highway Department, the RPC, and VTrans. And then we develop grant applications for projects. We work with consultant engineers to do designs, plans, and we engage the public. And this project initially appeared in the 2021 Bridge Street Complete Street Corridor Study. So we have go ahead.
Quick. Okay, first thing, if you hit F11, they'll go into full screen mode and we'll be able to see each slide in its entirety. Right now, we're getting 2 thirds of a slide at a time.
Well, I'm doing F11. Let me see if I can figure out. I got to move this thing, I think.
Yeah, that pop-up gets weird with this share screen.
Yeah, that's what's doing it.
Actually, that covers the topic.
It's legible at any rate.
Right.
Sorry, I'm not a
No worries.
We can make
master of this. Here's the intersection in question. Huntington Road is to your left, Bridge Street up to the top, Cochran Road, bottom right, Thompson Road. There is traffic control at this intersection at the end of Thompson Road, at the end of Cochran Road. And there is a crosswalk that runs from the left side of Thompson Road through the middle of the intersection. Not really an ideal place for a crosswalk because the line of sight can be challenging. In the first study, the engineers came up with a roundabout. That is the preferred ideal option for this intersection, but they also cost $800,000 and there is not a state municipal roundabout program. So while it is the preferred, we discounted it because we thought it was too costly.
Chris, I'm surprised by that. I didn't think there was enough real estate there to safely put in a roundabout.
You would have to acquire some property, which is another potential downside. Yeah.
Yeah.
Alternative 1 was a 4-way stop. And you can see there are stop bars at all 4 sides of the intersection. There is pedestrian crosswalks at all 4 sides of the intersection. And then you can see that on the Huntington and Bridge Street corner, that is brought in. So they bring that into the intersection a little bit to round that corner. And they do the same with the Cochran Road, Bridge Street intersection corner. They bring that out to give better definition to the intersection. There's also on this a sidewalk. This was something that the Transportation Committee added from Thompson Road to the Round Church complex, commercial complex. And that is of the size of sidewalk that our highway crew have done before. So we thought it may be something that would the town could add when it had funding in the budget. So that is the 4-way stop, and there's a better picture of that coming up. Pros and cons. This was the least expensive option. It's easily understandable for motorists. Ensures cars will stop, which makes it the safest alternative for pedestrians and bicyclists. On the con side, 5,400 vehicles use this intersection daily. This having stop signs require 24 hours, 365 days a year, days and night, when few, if any, pedestrians or bicycles would be present. Potential for added noise, vibration from trucks starting or stopping, has the potential to further delay the morning commute from Bridge Street. That was alternative 1. Alternative 2 essentially maintains the current flow from Huntington onto Bridge Street in both directions. It puts a mountable island. You have seen mountable islands in various roundabout designs throughout the state, and they vary from 1 inch mountable curb to as high as 3 inches mountable curb. And there are some that are even level with the roadway. So there is no curbing. You just mount the island if you need to, if you're coming through with an extra wide load or with an extra long trailer. There would still be the 2 traffic control devices on Cochran Road and Thompson Road, stop signs, and there would be curb. The same curbing. So this one would not bring in the intersection as much. You can see on Cochran Road and Bridge Street, they do bring out that apron of the road to round off that that corner. The other corner pretty much stays the same. And there are 4 sidewalk segments. And the first question our committee asked the consultants, why are we putting in sidewalk segments? Right now, as I mentioned earlier, there's just that long crossing from Thompson Road over to the middle of the sidewalk. There's no ADA landing pads, as you can see here with the raised beads. And this provides pedestrian refuge for people who want to go from Thompson and would like to get across over to the other side of Bridge Street, or would like to land on the sidewalk over there. So that is why there are 4 small sidewalk sections. The one that's on Thompson Road and Huntington Road, obviously we want to build it to the commercial sector. So this is pretty much the design of this one. This is it a little bit closer. You can see there's still from the center of the intersection 23 feet. And then it narrows down to 15. The concept behind this one is as you're entering in, this center island narrows the roadway. Anytime you narrow the roadway, vehicles will naturally slow down. And we're trying to reduce vehicle speeds going through the intersection. The other end of the island really rounds off. If you were coming from Huntington, you wanted to make a left-hand turn, you really are going to make a left-hand turn. You're not just going to make that round. So it tries to provide more 90-degree angles within the intersection that is typical of intersection movement. Island slows but does not stop traffic flow between Bridge Street and Huntington Street. Sidewalks are helpful for pedestrians waiting to cross. Currently no place to stand at some corners. Squares up the approach from Cochran Road to Bridge Street. More on the con side, this one's can be a little bit more expensive. Although on the pricing, it's going to show you differently. But you have to add up all the pricing. They're not too much difference in price between the two. I think it's about $28,000. This is less effective at protecting pedestrians and bicyclists and does not normalize the right-of-way, meaning what I just mentioned about the 90-degree curbs. Here are the cost estimates. 4-way stop, base cost was $100,000. The mountable island, base cost was $72,000. You do not need raised crosswalks on a 4-way stop because everybody stops. We are recommending raised crosswalks at the mountable island is the preferred alternative because that will help reduce vehicle speeds going through the intersection. Speed table at Huntington Road near Far Road, they'll both have that. Sidewalk to the business complex, we're recommending it for both projects. Street lights are $500 each a fixture, 1 or 2 recommended. John Cart has done some work with GMP and there isn't light out at the intersection currently. So we would want to get them to fix that first and see what is the lighting need at that intersection. Crossing flashers on the 4-way stop, they're not needed because all cars have to come to a stop. On the mountable island, we would be recommending those flashing pedestrian crossing similar to the one that is in Upper Bridge Street at the mid-block crossing. So those are the base costs and then the additional items you would have to add to get to it. Transportation Committee next steps is recommending the Select Board should consider a public meeting before selecting a preferred alternative. Invite everybody in. We took testimony on this for almost 2 years. And, you know, we would pick it up and then leave it alone and then pick it up and leave it alone. So we were getting new people every time we would pick it up again. We had a lot of people interested in this intersection. Some didn't want to change anything. Others wanted us to do more than what we're recommending here. The two proposals, you know, you guys get a larger attendance than we do. So we really think, you know, you're going to get new comments and new members of the public coming in to want to talk about this. And if the town decides that it wants to move forward on this project, we can begin discussions with VTrans about appropriate grant programs to start applying for. That is the overview of the presentation. There was another memo to you guys, and I'll assume that you're going to read that. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask them. John, did you have anything you wanted to add at the while you're in the room?
Or I could, John Carter, I'm also on the Transportation Committee. I'll just say, when the engineers first did this drafting alternatives for us, and we sort of went with the no bid, with the no change alternative, because we didn't think we can get the money for the roundabout, and we weren't sure about the others. The engineers sort of like said, we don't want to put our name on the no change alternative. They thought it was too dangerous. That's when they came back to us with the mountable curb. So even they, and none of them were based in Richmond, still were really concerned about that. So,
And that's an excellent point, and I'd be remiss without pointing out that this is on the VTrans high crash location. And that means it's had 6 crashes. I think it was in a 5-year period, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it is. And there's a lot of near misses at this particular intersection. Most notably, you find out-of-staters not knowing what to do at this intersection. Locals, you know, it took me a little while when I first moved to town 10 years ago to figure out how to successfully navigate it. And once you're a local, it's not that challenging. But, you know, when you're behind somebody with New Jersey plates and they start easing out and then they don't know what to do and they just sit there, it does become challenging for other motorists who are locals, who don't know what the person from New Jersey is going to do. So I've experienced that, and several members of the Transportation Committee have anecdotal stories of their own, as I'm sure a lot of people in town do.
Jay, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question. When you talk about mountable islands, if I recall correctly, you said some mountable islands have an inch curb, some have 3-inch curbs, some have no curb at all. Could you please clarify what is meant by a mountable island?
So when an 18-wheeler is using a roundabout in the state of Vermont, and notably you'll see it most in Morrisville and Route 100 there, they have a couple of roundabouts. A mountable island allows the back end of the trailer to go over the island. So it's I think the state standard is for state highways is a 3-inch curb. They know they're going over the island, they can feel it. But that's what it is. It's a safe way for these large vehicles to go through intersections that are being constrained to slow down traffic.
Okay, thanks. I appreciate that.
Yep.
Questions or comments for Chris or John? Lisa?
Chris, I guess, the raised sidewalks, do they have any value in slowing down traffic? I mean, I see they're only used as stop signs, but can they be used without stop signs?
Well, there's two different things. So to slow down traffic, when you're moving from one speed zone to another, it's probably more recommended to have a speed table and warning signs that motorists are approaching a speed table. If you're going to have crosswalks in an intersection where you don't have traffic control and you still want cars to slow down in that intersection, then it would be advisable to have raised sidewalks as well as the speed table. Drivers can see them better. And they're not the same size as a mountable, it's just a little 3-inch raise. I think you see it more commonly in Burlington where they put a brick imprint on them, they paint them red, and it's just a slight raise. So as a motorist, you can see that red across the road and going, okay, I've got a sidewalk approaching here.
Jay?
That's what raised sidewalks are.
So I see that we have an option in the memo to move to approve one alternative or the other. My instinct, just because I'm me, is to go with the 4-way stop, but I don't know that that's representative of what's really the best. I mean, the Transportation Committee recommends we have a hearing. And I think we'd be better served having that hearing and getting citizen input for once and for all than just going with what our gut says is best. So my 2 cents would be that we would move to have a hearing rather than picking an option tonight.
Now, Chris, I had a technical question for your recommendation. Are you asking for a public hearing, or are you asking for this to be discussed at a public meeting, i.e. a regular select board meeting?
I'll leave that to your particular expertise.
Okay. Question in the audience. Yes,
2 questions.
Denise, if you could introduce
Sorry,
yourself.
Denise Barnard. 2 quick questions. Number 1, on the Old Round Church Park, there's antique looking lights to stay with the aesthetics of the Old Round Church. And I just would hope that you would consider those type of lighting when you do any lighting on the park. And number 2, the 2 large trees that are on the border of Cochran Road, those would not have to change, would they?
I'll defer to John. He seems to know the 2 trees you're talking about.
Those will stay. Okay. Thank you.
Now, Pete, I have a question for you. You, in your work for the town, go through this intersection frequently. What are the challenges for coming off Thompson Road? I know I've gotten stuck at Thompson Road, and I've gotten stuck at the end of Cochran Road with traffic in each direction. What are your thoughts?
Depending on the height of the mountable curb, it probably won't be a big issue if we can plow right over it. But I see that we're moving forward to some major alternative changes. Can you hear me here? No.
Yeah, Keith, can you mute yourself? You're feeding back somehow.
I am?
Thanks. Okay, no, you're all set now, Pete.
Okay. I see we're moving forward with these 4 alternatives, but you know how I am. I always like to try simple things. I had mentioned this a few years back about all the pedestrian crossings, starting from the choice physical therapy or the physical therapy, long trail physical therapy, all the way up to Bridge Street, putting in the illuminated pedestrian crossings, meaning once those things light up, those crosswalks are active. Put in the ADA plates, which gets us in compliance. There is a depressed ramp already at that intersection. That's a cheap option. That's a huge safety upgrade, because there's another crosswalk just down the road on Cochran Road that crosses in front of the round church, and we haven't even discussed that one. That's number 1 easy step. Number 2, a 4-way stop. We already have a backup congestion problem with school traffic on a regular day, and if we stop those cars, every car at a stop sign, I think we're going to have that traffic almost back beyond the fire farm. So I foresee a major issue with a 4-way stop. This is just my opinion. I just figured I'd throw that out there. But I think as far as maintaining, plowing it and whatever, I don't see a big issue as long as we don't put a huge obstruction in the roadway.
Pete, as far as the ability for you to use the intersection to get trucks through, do you have any preference as far as 4-way stop, raised island?
No, the 4-way stop would be like any other one. You just got to wait till you got enough clearance to, like, say, if you're coming out of Thompson Road, turning left, you got to make sure there's no car sitting there stopped. So you got adequate turning room, because we're going to take, we're 14 feet wide. We're going to take half of that lane that's coming into the village as we go out. We'll probably have to use a small vehicle to plow that intersection out, because it'll be a little difficult with the big trucks with vehicles stopping at all 4 corners.
Okay. Board, any other questions or comments for Chris or John? Members of the public? People on Zoom? Keith, did you want to make a comment earlier or were you just unmuted?
Nope, I'm fine.
Okay, Jay, go ahead. You're muted.
Thank you. My recommendation based on what we've heard, you said something about, do we want a public hearing or do we just want this raised as a topic of the select board? I'm ambivalent. I just want to make sure that we have an adequately warned option where people, I mean, it was on the agenda, the publicly warned agenda tonight, but I don't know if people really, you know, the audience is not overwhelming, and I know there's a lot of people with opinions on this. So I would recommend that we make this another, kick this down the road to 1 or 2 meetings down the road, make sure that we adequately publicize the options, really make sure people know that this is their chance to come and be heard for once and for all. That would be my recommendation rather than picking an option tonight.
Okay. Is that a motion or a recommendation?
That is a recommendation, but I'll phrase it in form of a motion. I move that we schedule this for 2 meetings from tonight to solicit public input, and at that time decide whether we want to make a vote at that time.
Okay. Thank you, Jay. Do we have a second?
Sure. Is Bard, I will second that.
Okay, a motion made by Jay, seconded by Bard to bring this up. Now, you said 2 meetings from now, not 2 weeks from now.
No, I said 2 meetings from now just to make sure people,
Okay.
I want to make sure people have absolutely adequate time to really chew on this.
Okay. Now, John, I saw you had your hand up and now I see your hand is down and your picture's out. Did you still want to make a comment? Go ahead.
No, that's fine. I'll wait for the public hearing. I just wanted to make sure that I had an opportunity if it presented itself, and I'm fine to wait for the larger conversation time.
So if I understand the intent of Jay's motion, which Bard seconded, this is for this to be discussed at a future meeting, 2 meetings from tonight, not a public hearing. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Bard?
You know, I'm also looking at some of the materials here and thinking about, Chris, John, are there any modifications that you would contemplate? One of the questions was, do we do something different with the crosswalks about how they're painted or raised or make them more obvious? Are there any other like modifications that you would contemplate or that are contemplatable based on the 2 options that are really kind of on the table?
The 2 options being option 1, a 4-way stop, and option 2
4-way and island. Yeah.
Well,
option 2 being an island in the intersection.
I mean, I think what you see in the schematics and the designs for the 2 options are what were the recommendations from the consultants. And then when you get to the cost sheet, you see those base costs, and those are what the consultants designed. And then you see the items below it. Those are all the items that we added to the project. The additional sidewalk for the island option, as what Pete said, Pete Goslin, we recommended the lighted pedestrian flashing beacons for the crosswalks. So we did look for additional things to enhance the safety of the project, and those were the items we added.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just add, and hopefully for the public meeting, we could invite someone maybe from the CCRPC who could speak to some of this. There's just so many flashing lighted crosswalks you could put on a stretch of road that's within state law. So, you know, you can't just put them every block. So if we put one at that corner, could there be one at the place where people normally cross over to the Round Church or around the corner by the Round Church in Commercial Park? Probably good to get someone who knows that rule well to be at the meeting to answer those questions.
Bard?
So David, I'll just note, I've heard some of this conversation in the past, and the traffic engineers say it actually is part of its behavior, that if there's so many, all these places, that drivers apparently reach some level of saturation when there's too many of them, that they're more effective used
Targeted.
sparsely or targeted. And I don't know the science behind that. I just remember that was a comment that was made.
Hey, and one more point that was raised, I don't want it to seem like we didn't discuss that crosswalk, that mid-block crosswalk, that goes to the round church. We definitely did. There are issues with that, but it wasn't part of our project in terms of the intersection. It was outside the scope of our project. But whatever the select board decides, the town decides it wants to move forward on, that should be looked at as well in terms of the overall pedestrian pattern in that corridor.
Lisa?
Hey, Chris,
Yes.
from the time of approval, what do you think the execution time would be to get this completed? I mean, the four-way stop, I guess, would be the one to look at for me.
That's a difficult question to answer. It would be dependent on funding is the first threshold. The second threshold is how much work could the town do? You have a fairly skilled transportation municipal highway department. So how much is contracted, how much is done in town? I don't know what the divide is on that. If you're going for grant funds, it'll be 4 or 5 years for sure.
Does the consultant have any ability to forecast that a little bit? Or is that something?
It's all about how much money the town has gotten in grants from the state of Vermont regarding transportation, what that cycle is. We already have a TAP grant. The select board needs to determine its priorities for the projects we're planning. We're kind of slowing down on our planning activities and want to get the first projects that we have put through the pipeline. And there are other projects that we're planning and studying that may have a higher priority for towns, such as the Cochran Road corridor study, which is a scoping study at both ends of Cochran Road, and then a look at Cochran Road outside of the 25-mile-an-hour zones and what could be done there for better safety of pedestrians, bicyclists, those recreating in that corridor. So it just becomes a prioritization for the town as to what are the priority projects and which ones do you want to move forward on.
Any other questions or comments before calling the motion for a vote? Calling the motion to a vote. So the motion as made by Jay and seconded by Bard is to bring this discussion up 2 meetings from now. So roughly a month from now, seeking public input on direction on which way to go. Before calling for a vote, I just want to caution that time is a bit of an issue here. A month from now, it will be lighter, longer foliage is coming out, so visibility will be less. Speeds tend to speed up as the temperature increases, and there will be a lot more recreating through that area in a month with pedestrians and cyclists and rollerbladers and joggers and strollers and dog walkers and all of the type of recreation that we see at that intersection. So calling the motion to a vote, this is a motion to discuss this 2 meetings from tonight, seeking public input and trying to come up with some sort of a consensus on which way to go. So please identify yourself and signify your vote.
Jay, I.
Adam, I.
Bard, aye. Lisa, aye.
And David, aye. So we will bring this up 2 meetings from tonight. John, Chris, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing this to us. I agree. This is an intersection that needs attention. I've had a few close calls there myself and seen many more. Are we ready to move on? Sounds like we are. Moving on, next on our agenda tonight is the public hearing on the fiscal year 25 capital plan.
David, I move to open the public hearing to consider adoption of the FY25 capital plan.
Thank you, Jay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Lisa. Motion made by Jay, seconded by Lisa to open the public hearing to consider adoption of the fiscal year 25 capital plan. I'm assuming there's no discussion. Calling the motion to a vote, please identify yourself and signify your vote.
Jay, I.
Adam, I.
Bard, aye. Lisa, I.
And David, I. The public hearing has begun. So is there any public comment on the plan? Did we want to sort of walk through the plan or?
Sure, we can give an overview. So the capital plan is constructed as a tool to help plan for purchases of capital equipment, buildings and infrastructure. The plan builds on the direction for capital expenditures that was started with the FY23 budget and is continued through the FY25 budget, specifically planning to use unassigned funds, restricted funds, reserve funds, and money raised from taxes to pay for capital equipment without taking loans. That said, there's still be likely some items that we need to get loans or bonds for, so larger projects like town center or maybe larger fire trucks. But this plan really tends to try to move us away from loans. We've calculated in the past, we've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on interest and trying to move away from that. Where we've been trying to go in the last few years. This plan, I think, is really sort of year 3 now that we've been trying to implement that. Connie, I'm not sure if you have much more of an overview to add to this, anything specific you want to call out. But then the next part of this is really lots of public feedback, or as much as there is, and then for the board to vote. Connie?
I think the biggest part is the spreadsheet that shows how much we'll need to raise in taxes for all the reserves that we budget each year from year to year, trying to keep that at a fairly steady number, and also how much we have accumulated between all the reserves from year to year. The biggest thing to remember is, although that looks like a big number, what we have for total in reserves, we have a great schedule put together where one year one department's spending and then the next year it's the next department spending. So at any given time, the highway budget could be very low or the fire department budget could be very low. So the objective was to try to keep things at a slow incline versus ups and downs.
Thank you, Connie. Questions, comments from the board?
I like looking at the chart. I mean, it just moves very nicely from year to year. There's no big clump of expenses. There's no big holes. Looks like you have a little bit of room to move things around if you need to, but looks like a nice job.
I am going to throw a plug into Pete. He figured out years ago the sweet spot for turning in equipment and finding when they become more expensive to keep versus trade. And, I've said it before and I'll say it again, managing 200-year storms in 6 months is a huge undertaking. And we're all very grateful, not only on the board, but in the town as well. All the feedback I've gotten has been very positive, and that's something to be proud of.
Very much appreciated.
Okay, not hearing any public comment. Can I have a motion to close the public hearing?
Mr. Chairman, so moves. Close the public hearing.
Thank you, Lisa. Do we have a second?
Adam, second.
Thank you, Adam. So motion made by Lisa Miller, seconded by Adam Wood to close the public hearing to consider adoption of the fiscal year 25 capital plan. Not hearing any further discussion, calling the motion to a vote. Please identify yourself and signify your vote.
Jay, I.
Adam, I.
Bart, I. Lisa, I.
And David, I. The public hearing has been closed.
Mr. Chairman, I move to adopt the FY25 capital plan.
Thank you, Jay. Do we have a second?
Okay.
Thank you, Lisa. So the motion made by Jay Furr, seconded by Lisa Miller, is to adopt the fiscal year 25 capital plan as presented. Absent any further discussion, calling the motion to a vote, please identify yourself and signify your vote.
Jay, I.
Adam, I.
Bart, I. Lisa, I.
And David, I. Motion has carried unanimously. Thank you. Are we ready to move on? Looks like we are. Moving on. Consideration of writing a letter to support for the Vermont Youth Conservation Corps congressionally directed spending request. Josh, did you want to touch on this?
Actually, I'll turn it over to Breck Knopf from VYCC, who contacted me about this last week.
Oh, okay.
I think I saw Breck up here.
Yeah,
There
he is there.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. I'm
evening.
Breck Knopf. I live in Huntington, and I'm an executive director of Vermont Youth Conservation Corps right here in Richmond. And as Josh just said, I talked with him last week about an application that we're in the process of preparing for Senator Welch's review. It's a congressionally directed spending request to increase housing on our campus. So thank you all for including this topic in the agenda. I know it's a full agenda. I thought what I might do is just provide a quick overview of the process by which one applies for a congressionally directed spending request, and then pivot to some of the specifics. The way that a congressionally directed spending request proposal works is the first step is to apply to the senator's office for review. And there's 3 pieces to the application. There's a relatively simple, fairly short, actually, narrative. There's a budget, and then there's different attachments that you can include, including letters of support. So we've asked Champlain Housing Trust, the Richmond Land Trust, as well as our state officials, so 3 senators and 1 representative, to sign a shared letter of support, and of course the Richmond Selectboard here. Once that application is received, it's due next Monday, the senator and the staff review all the applications that they receive, and then if we're selected, that's really just the first hoop. It then goes to the relevant committee in Congress, and then that committee has to approve it. And then, of course, the Senate and House and the president have to pass a budget. So this is really just the first step, and having the senator approve it is by no means an indication that you'll get the funding. A little bit of history: we are grateful to Senator Leahy, who secured a congressionally directed spending request to help start the restoration of the East Monitor Barn. We also applied for one last year with Senator Welch for some farm improvements. That was not successful. So we're throwing our hat in the ring again to increase housing. Another point to make here is that the Richmond Selectboard providing a letter of support is not the same as the Richmond Selectboard giving VYCC permission to start construction. We know we have lots more information to provide before we get there, and I've been in touch with folks in Richmond about that whole process. So just quickly, some key points for the actual project and proposal. What we're trying to do is reduce barriers to participation. We start with the belief that the VYCC experience is a really profound, empowering experience in the life of a young person. That's a paid service experience, and reducing barriers to participation is a key goal. We want to support our members more effectively. They work really hard when they're out in the field, and having places where they can come back onto our campus and decompress and spend a weekend there, doing things like laundry and having a comfortable bed is a way to support them more effectively. We also want to enhance training and our teaching capacity. And of course, you've seen restoration of the barn, and so historic rehabilitation and preservation is another goal. As we think about those project goals, housing's really emerged as a need for staff, for leaders, for members. I'm sure the select board's well aware of that. 3 specific buildings that we're thinking about housing in are our farmhouse, repurposing the West Monitor Barn to be a dorm, and then possibly another dorm on the hillside. The East Barn would then emerge as our offices. So we're doing a campus reimagination. We're working with Vermont Integrated Architecture, O'Leary and Burke Engineers, the historic preservation community. About 1.5 years ago, we came and provided a high-level overview with the DRB, and just started that conversation. I think my read on that is that they were conceptually supportive, but wanted more details. And so we spent the last stretch of time working out those details and are ready to restart that conversation. But in the here and now, there's a grant opportunity, and wanted to ask the select board for support. So I'll pause there and see what questions people might have, and see how we can move forward.
Questions or comments for Brett? Bart?
Just one question. It talks about year round for 40 and seasonal accommodations for 100. And it just because we just had our water sewer meeting, so it's at the top of my mind. Do you have water and septic that could manage 100 people residing in the buildings there?
We'd have to build a new septic system. We have the water. We might have to apply for a different type of permit for our wells, but I think we have the actual water capacity. But we would need an additional newly engineered and installed septic system.
Jay?
Well, for once, I'm not muted. I live just down the road from this property on Murray Drive. I drive by it every day. I see all the activity going on there, and I personally have no reservations about the increased residential capacity. But the obvious question that always comes up is how many additional entrances and exits out of this property onto East Main Street do you think this is going to generate each day?
None. I think we would use the 2 that already exist.
No, I'm saying in terms of bodies, more people coming and going.
Oh, in the near future, I don't see a radical increase. I think what we're really trying to do is support our members better. There would probably be some increases over time, but I would have to spend a little bit of time doing the math there so I could get you projections that are really grounded.
Okay, that's just, whenever there's a new housing development of any kind built, the Act 250 impacts the traffic is always one of the considerations. So I was just curious if you had those numbers yet.
Yeah, not off the top of my head.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Not seeing any. Is anybody ready to make a motion? Bard?
Just one other comment. It would seem when all elements converting the West Monitor barn, building a new dorm and renovating the farmhouse, it feels, and please correct me if I'm wrong, this is still kind of in a early stage of planning. I mean, you don't have like site plans or anything yet, presumably.
We've got a draft or 2 of those, but I think they need a little more polishing before bringing them to the town of Richmond.
So then my point is, because of the things that are mentioned tonight, this is somewhat conceptual. We're supporting a concept versus a plan, it seems to me. And that I'm not raining on the parade at all. That's just an observation versus, something that comes forward with more detailed plan.
That's a good point.
I mean, wouldn't that fall under, any plan they propose would have to be reviewed by the DRB and relevant boards, right? So
Yeah, so I mean, it would have to go through that process
Conceptually,
anyway,
but-
but so it's really the conceptual stage in terms of what would it look like, you're right. DRB would want to see things.
we still have our chance to change our mind and turn it.
Well, there are hurdles
Um,
yet to
yeah.
come, perhaps.
Yeah, so we're conceptually supporting the idea of it, and then it has to meet all the regulatory barriers, et cetera.
Jay?
I note that the draft motion in the packet includes appointing a select board member to work with the town manager in the final draft of the letter. Unless anybody else particularly wants to, I would be happy to be that member. So with that in mind, I move to approve a letter of support from the select board for the Vermont Youth Conservation Corps' congressionally directed spending request, and to appoint select board member Jay Fur to work with the town manager on the final draft of the letter.
This is Bart, I'll second that.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you, Bard, for seconding. I have one question. Go ahead.
Jay, I thank you for volunteering to work with me on the letter, but I know you're out of town, I think, for the rest of the week, and this letter, we need to get to Breck probably by the end of the week. Do you have back and forth on email is good for you? You'll have time?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm in a resort where you don't have to go anywhere. So
Okay. I just wanted to make sure, you knew the deadline was rather short and we
No,
can
I will
work-
be happy to,
we
if you
work on it
want to do
next
a,
week.
if you want to have a call
Okay.
tomorrow morning, we can have a call.
Jay and Josh, would it be helpful if I sketched out a draft that you all could modify
Sure.
and adjust? Yeah, I've got some time set aside tomorrow to do some writing, and I can include that on my list and get that over to you late morning by noon or so.
Okay, and then Josh, once that comes in, I'll reach out to you.
Sounds like a plan.
Okay.
Jay, I think
Thanks,
it's just
everyone.
worth mentioning, it's dark outside, the temperature's plummeting, and they're talking about snowstorm coming Wednesday night. We're talking 2 to 3 feet. Just wanted to mention that, but I hope you're having a good time in Bermuda.
You're missing some good skiing.
Denise?
Breck, when might you hear from Senator Welch's office on a yay or nay?
Probably a couple months if the history is any guide. But again, that's but then it's dependent on our friends in Washington passing things, and so that's, I mean, it took 18 months in this last round.
Okay. Good luck.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Okay,
All right,
so the
thanks,
motion.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So the motion, which was made by Jay Furr, seconded by Bard Hill, is a motion to approve the letter of support from the Select Board for the Vermont Youth Conservation Corps congressionally directed spending request, and to appoint Select Board member Jay Furr to work with Town Manager Josh Arneson on the final design of the letter. Any further discussion before calling the motion to a vote? Seeing none, hearing none, calling the motion to a vote. Please identify yourself and signify your vote.
Jay, I.
Adam, I. Bard, I.
Lisa, aye.
David, I. Thank you. We ready to move on? Sounds like we are. Next is review of the Highway Department summer work plan. Pete, are you ready to go?
I am ready. I am ready.
All yours.
Okay, I'm going to start with a quick overview. So this was one of the toughest summer work plans I've ever put together. Having 100-year
Really?
flood at the start of the fiscal year just threw us for the biggest curveball. We lost 4 months of we basically lost July all the way to November last year working on flood related damage, and didn't perform our paving. We didn't do our scheduled paving. We didn't do our gravel plan. We didn't do our East Main Street sidewalk replacement project. All this stuff is just sitting there unexpended. And we got till June 30 to utilize those funds, which are actively in the budget. So I condensed those funds right up front to be utilized before June 30th, and then put in portions of the work plan we didn't do last year, which I thought we could still complete. In addition to that, we also incurred an additional stormwater project on Tilden Avenue, which is a major failure over there at a certain resident's house that, it needs to be upgraded, and the select board's aware of this situation. We brought our engineer in, we've done some basic site review and some rough ideas of how we can address this. It's going to involve some test pit work in the roadway to make sure the pipeline will fit into an existing stormwater structure. So, that compounded on top of last year's work, and then try to fit in this year's work. In addition to that, we were awarded a grant last year for the upper portion of Snipe Island Road, a Better Roads grant, which has a deadline of September 30th. So putting these projects all together, they're very, very time sensitive. And if we get anywhere of the type of weather we had last year, I don't know what's going to happen. I'm hoping that we get a normal, reasonable summer. So that being said, I'm just going to roll down through the work plan. And then I got one area, that Tilden Avenue stormwater project, we can discuss a little bit. So beginning on April 18th, we're going to go back to our 10-hour workday schedule, which is Monday through Thursday. Last year was a godsend. I mean, us working those 4 10s, we had that Friday available, and we used quite a few of them to deal with these road issues that we had to keep, we just had all this additional work. This past month, we jumped into the work season early. We don't typically start till April, but March was, for the most part, other than the big snowstorm, was relatively warm, and it wasn't any snow. So we got our brush cutting done. We replaced the driveway culvert on Huntington Road that had collapsed at the Towers Farm. And right now we're actively grading all the dirt roads, starting the first round of grading, getting the humps and bumps and potholes out, getting them ready for the real grading that'll be coming, in the next few weeks with the chloride treatment. Moving into April, we just started today the East Main Street sidewalk project, but we're only going to be doing the granite curb portion of this. And the reason for that is the state's right behind us with the finished course of the paving, and that locks all the paving into the curb, which is locks into the storm drains. Because we just have so much work that we have to complete before June 30th, we can't tackle the concrete part of it right now. We're going to start in July on that. So I just wanted to kind of tell you that we're just doing 50% of that project. Our plan in April also is to do this test pit work on Tilden Avenue. So Tyler Billingsley of East Engineering can do a design for the stormwater upgrade for this project. So that'll be done. He can work on his design. He can come back to, we can come back to the town and I can put numbers to it. If it's a town project, it's around a $15,000 project. If it's contracted, it's probably going to be 50 at least. We'll get to that after, but rolling into May, we've got our typical line striping, all the parking lots, all the crosswalks. We've got asphalt work, patchwork to still do in the volunteers green from the December flood that took the playground out. We still got silt cleanup to do in the field out there. Then we, put the flags up for the whole season. And then we need to finish our fiscal year 24 gravel plan, which we did not do last year. There's like $85,000 sitting there in that account, and we don't want to shortchange these roads that were on the resurfacing schedule. So Hillview and Christmas Hill are going to start in May and finish out in June. Then the fiscal year 24 money needs to be expended by June 30th, or that gets rolled forward or goes somewhere else. There's $325,000 here. I have bids out currently, which combines both fiscal years. And this also takes into consideration the fog lines that the town has approved to put in. So there's a segment of Huntington Road that the fog lines will not be installed because we're going to be resurfacing in June and then again later in July or August. And then the fog lines will probably come back either in the fall or the following spring. July, typically we split the crew in half, so there's always somebody available. In July, we're looking to pull all the asphalt sidewalks off of East Main and upgrade them to concrete. And that's going to be a little tricky because we got a lot of grades to deal with. We got properties that are lower than Route 2. We got properties that are higher than Route 2. We've got some fences. So we're going to work with all the landowners. We're going to blend properties. We're going to blend their existing sidewalks into the new sidewalks, just like we did on Bridge Street. That's going to be at least a month project, if not a little bit more. Probably going to take us well into August. In August, hoping to replace a culvert at the end of Palmer Lane. This one has washed out, I think, 4 times in the last 3 years. It takes water from the backside of Williams Hill, and it just cannot take it. It's undersized. We have the culvert in stock to replace it. We just haven't been able to do it. So that one's a big priority to get done well before winter sets in. And then moving into September, the Better Roads Grant, which has a deadline of September 30th. That's the last 1,500 feet of Snipe Island Road. There's some tree removal, some stump removal, some slight road widening about 10 feet, ditches to be put in, some culverts to be dug out and replaced, a pad at the top of the hill so we can turn our truck safely without getting stuck. And again, we were awarded that contract last year, that grant, and we definitely want to utilize it. That pushes that Tilden Avenue stormwater project into October. Now, the resident that's impacted directly by this project has reached out to me and is a little concerned about this project being at the end of the work season for obvious reasons. I mean, if we have all kinds of rain events and things get pushed out, that'll probably be the project we don't do. But it's kind of a unique situation. We will have unexpended stormwater money available in fiscal year 24 currently, because by moving the concrete part of the sidewalk project out into July, there's about $75,000 that we're not going to utilize. So it's a possibility if the town wants to move forward to put this under contract and have Tyler engineer it and just have it all done by a contractor, I would totally support that. Again, that's, I hope she's on the meeting. Just wanted to hear her input on that. Let's see where we're at. Again, in typical October, You know, we do any unfinished work that's left. We prepare and winterize the concession stand for winter. We get all our trucks and equipment ready. You know, whatever hydraulic work they need, you know, plows. There's a million pieces that don't get used from last winter that we got to now go through and make sure everything's working. And typically November, that's when the snow starts flying. So we don't try to schedule anything. We might get lucky and get a couple weeks where we'll do a little ditch work or a little culvert work, but we can't plan on it, you know. And that's kind of it, all condensed. It's an aggressive plan, but I think that's the best we can do as a highway department with what we have, and try to utilize the fiscal year 24 funds that's currently there. I just really don't want those to not be expended. So that's kind of it. I don't know if anybody has any questions for me. I'd be glad to answer them.
Pete, this is Bart. I have two questions. The first is, when do you plan on to stop plowing snow this year?
Month ago. It sounds like Thursday they're going to be plowing. You know, it's just like winter is going to come. I think winter's going to start in March and end in June now. You know, so who knows anymore? I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah. So I say that in jest, but also it's illustrative of the relative uncertainty of in recent times about not just snow, but rain events, right?
Absolutely.
And then my other question, to focus on Chittenden Avenue, full disclosure, I live on Chittenden Avenue, although my house and property are not directly impacted by this stormwater challenge. To the question of if we were going to contract it out, when do you think the engineering plan would be available, such that if we were interested in contemplating a bid or contract, that it would be ready for bid or contract? Do you know?
It would be ready in April. It'll be ready within 3 weeks because it's on that plan. So the issue is with this stormwater pipe that has to be installed to take this water needs to be put on the edge of Chittenden Avenue. That also conflicts with a future water main project. And there's a water service crossing, a sewer service crossing, and a natural gas crossing that all intersect this stormwater pipe. So without test pitting those locations to get elevations to see if the pipe will fit, we don't know if any of this project will work. So that's scheduled to be done in the month of April. And we could push that up to the middle of April, a couple weeks out to do that. Once Tyler knows those elevations, he can finish that design. And it wouldn't take him very long to put a bid together. I mean, it's a fairly small project. I would think, you know, I give him a week, I bet he could have a bid packet together.
And then the follow-up question, do you think it's plausible that we'd get a reasonable cost bid on relatively short notice? If we're bidding this out in April or May, that somebody would be doing it sooner than you could do it?
I think we're going to get a reasonable bid on this. It's not like months worth of work. The other thing is, I don't know if there's a way for the town to, if we approve a purchase order for this and say they can't come in till July, but we've got a contractor scheduled for this project, if that money could be allotted to be spent into the following fiscal year. That's a technical financial question. But this way here, it puts a time frame on this project. You know, it can be written in the bid, must be done by boom. Give the contractor a few months to do it so they can give us the better price. We really won't know until we put it out there, to be honest with you. It's fairly early. It's like a 5-day project. Most contractors, local contractors, can absorb these kind of projects fairly easy. But if we were into like end of May, then you're looking at July, August work, you know, and then I think we're really pushing the envelope a little bit. The prices are going to go way up.
Thank you.
Denise?
Hi, Pete. Denise Barnard. Full disclosure, I live on Jonesville Estates. This winter, a truck hit the end of the guardrails and really ruined the guardrails. And I'm just wondering, is that a project that is on your summer repair? And number two part of the question, does the actual vehicle, the one that had the accident, do they pay for the repairs?
So the way the property insurance goes, we have to do the repair and then submit a claim to the vehicle or to the insured that did the damage to their insurance company for reimbursement. We're most likely, I believe we're gonna have to pay the deductible. Yes, that is on the horizon to be done. That is gonna be done in conjunction with the Southview Drive guardrail replacement project, which is also slated for fall, which is fiscal year 25. We've been putting a pot of money aside for the last 5 years in a reserve. And that's the first major guardrail project to be done. I wanted to add that little repair to it. Like, meaning it probably would cost us next to nothing to have that done inside of that major project. But at any rate, yes, that is scheduled, or it's going to be done before snow flies. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Pete, you mentioned possibly contracting out some of the East Main Street sidewalk stuff too. How does that and possibly contracting out the Tilden Ave project and all that stuff factor in? What are your thoughts about your preferences for contracting out one, both, neither, etc.?
So the contracting of East Main Street, it would be just the concrete part itself. We would do all the preparation. If we were to contract out the entire amount, Chris has the numbers, we're $300,000+, which this is why I came to the town 2 years ago with a proposal with segmented major village repairs and sidewalks to keep it well within our general fund. And it's not a project that we can't do. It's just, we got thrown that curveball last year that just really, I mean, we lost 4 months last year. So, so the plan is we do the preparation. We rip the old one out. We prepare it for the new concrete. Professional contractor puts the concrete in to the proper specs, and we do all the finish work on the sides of it. It's just exact same detail we just did on Bridge Street.
Good deal.
Any other questions or comments for Pete? Thanks, Pete. You're doing a hell of a job. We appreciate it. We'll see what the next year brings.
Boy, yeah, no more park issues for a while, please.
Yeah, I think the next playground should be made out of Tupperware. Moving on.
Bunch of inner tubes.
Yeah. Josh, you want to head the discussion of the next steps for the Town Center and Library Buildings Committee? The committee's done a fantastic job of figuring out what needs to be done. And then, of course, the bond failed. So now the question is, how do we pick this up and carry it forward?
I mean, we talked about it a bit at the last meeting.
Yeah.
I think we're sort of, I was on the committee, kind of looking for direction of how do we want to handle our next steps. I thought Lori wrote a really nice recap and memo, included that in the packet.
I mean, 5 years of hard work is done. I think my personal opinion, next step is exploring grant possibilities and ferreting out various costs, what this would cost, what that would cost, what we absolutely need, what we should do, what would be nice to have done.
So David, it's Bart, one of the things I've heard, and we heard it at least once tonight, is we should at least overtly call the question, are we talking this building? And just confirm that, because if it's this building, then I think we have the parts that have been identified. There are folks who, again, we've heard this, I don't think it's a majority, but there is a group of people who have questioned whether we should walk away from this building, do something else with it. So I think that is a fork in the road that we should just be perhaps clear about again with at least one new select board member, if that's our choice. And then it seems to me that if we're going to maybe take the component parts, there's been conversations, front porch forum traffic on this. How do we break it into the things that would be sooner? Like, how do you stretch it out over time? The things that would make sense, even though it was very clear from the committee's work and conversations with Jeff Ford when he was on the board, that it makes the most sense in terms of, a construction project to do it all at once. But that does not appear to be an option unless we get a lot of money, like a congressional earmark pays for the whole thing.
Yes, please.
I'm not sure that we should hold our breath for that to happen, but I mean, and so one approach would be to resurrect a new committee with a somewhat different charge, which might be twofold. One is to contemplate what staging different parts of the plan would look like over some period of time, and what a logical sequence would look like as opposed to all at once. And perhaps the second related part of pursuing funding. Like, we put something in for congressional funding in the next few days.
No pressure.
I think the committee put in at least twice, if not 3 times for that. So
Yeah.
we did explore that.
Yeah, and frankly, I've had this conversation with several of our neighbors. It's a lot of money and it feels like a lot of money, but here's what's difficult perhaps to grasp. That the per capita income in Richmond over the last 30 years relative to the rest of the state has changed substantially.
Mhm.
We're not a poor community. If I remember correctly, we're something like number 18 in the state, and above us is like Woodstock and Manchester, Charlotte. We're not that far below them. So the point of that is not just can we afford it or not, and perhaps some members of the community think they can and some think they can't. My point is more about funding, that typically funding is more targeted for communities that can't afford, that don't have a tax base or an income base. Number 10. So we slowly climb up over the years. Last time I think I looked, we were number 18.
Last time I looked, we were 11.
So anyway, the point is when you're that close to the top, you're not a great candidate for a scholarship based on financial need. So if it's not for financial need, why would they give us money? And I don't want to be negative, or I'm just cautious about what the plausibility of all these funding sources are. It's my observation that funding sources are more available for like mobile home parks where people have low income and high expenses than a town center supported by the town as a whole. That said, notwithstanding what I just said, that might be a 2-part task for a new or resurrected committee to look at what would the expense side look like to stretch it out over a longer period of time. And what options, if any, are there for funding? Grant funds. I note also that the interest rates are not as advantageous as they were just 5 years ago. So it's not a great time to borrow money either. And then the final comment I'll make is it is unfortunate and perhaps awkward that this came forward at the same time as, a pretty significant school budget. And school budgets around the state, while we vote tomorrow.
Right here in this building.
What, 20% of the school budgets that were voted failed, something like that?
More than that. It's the third.
And I think that's really a reaction. People are just saying, I can't afford this. So I'm not sure that's going to go away in the near term. The perception and belief, and it's a reality for many people that they can't afford this tax increase. So this tax increase and that tax increase on top of our base town budget tax increase.
Yeah, Bird, thank you. That bond would hurt me pretty bad too. And I think everybody would feel it. The committee that did the first work, Jeff's committee, I think they did a really good job. They put it all together and as one whole package. And as Bart had pointed out, maybe it needs to be taken apart a little bit. Maybe we do this and leave that. Maybe we do this and do that later. We spread the money out so we don't have to pay the cost of money for the full amount until the very end. And we can stretch our schedule out too. There's some things that can't be done and, they're seasonal, okay? There's some things that can't be done with occupants of the building, but maybe some of those things can be done that way.
Or should be done.
Or should be done, right? And I don't know, if they had tried to present all that, it would have been a 4 or 5 hour presentation. No one would be there at the end, or they'd all go away with a different idea. So, but now I think we need to find those pieces, put them together in all the different arrangements that are feasible and practical, and see if there's a cost difference and a time difference. Time and money are the same thing, so.
Something I wanted to point out, I've been monitoring the traffic on Front Porch Forum and the comments made to me. There's a belief that nothing has been done on this building for decades. And while I'm not going to say that the town of Richmond has done an absolutely wonderful job of maintaining this building, I will say that we have been maintaining this building. My time on the board, we've put a new roof on the main building. We put a new HVAC system in the post office. We've done a lot of plumbing and heating upgrades. We replaced the boilers with natural gas. We repaved the parking lot. We've upgraded the wiring, the lighting. It's not that we haven't done anything. I'm not going to say that we've done everything we could and should have done, but I will say attention and resources have been spent maintaining the building. It's not nothing. So just wanted to say that.
One other thing too is we do have some things that need to be done right away in this building. What's stopping us? You know, we're waiting for an overall vote and a bond package, but we don't have to wait for that. The hole that lets the water into the basement could be fixed. Not cheap, but there's nothing in the way of doing that, I think. The post office roof needs work, and that's regardless of whatever else we do to this building. So that should be done for several important reasons.
Yeah.
You know, so I don't know, but if we have, I don't think we have the money for those exactly, but I also don't know what it's going to cost. That's in the numbers or something.
Yeah, and the committee did do a wonderful job of identifying the need and the how. Problem is just the
David.
Jay has hand up, and then Connie had her made a comment here. And I think there are different ways of looking at this, but there were people in the room saying it wasn't number 18, we're like number 10, we're number 11. So I think it is all relative. The core point, I think, is that when I moved to our town 30 odd years ago, we were somewhere near the middle, and we are not somewhere near the middle in the rankings that I have seen.
There's a
So
trend.
I'm sure there are different ways of looking at it, per capita, household, etc. But putting that aside, it is my thesis that we are not the best candidate for some of the grant funds. You know, when I think about where there are other towns similarly sized in other parts of the state with much lower incomes and similar challenges in terms of publicly funded services and facilities. But that's something that this group could take up if we created a new committee. But Jay's hands up.
Go ahead, Jay.
Well, I had something to say, but I want to call out Connie's point. Mean versus median is a legitimate topic to bring up. If you have a billionaire in a town where everybody else makes exactly $40,000, the mean income will look much higher than it would if that one person left town. In terms of median, we have a lot of people who don't make much money. And it doesn't change Bard's point that we are not good candidates for a lot of public funding. But I think it does help us understand why the vote went down. There are people who they just simply could not afford one more thing. The other thing I wanted to mention, though, is it has to do with, you mentioned monitoring Front Porch Forum traffic. I've seen a number of people talk about, why don't we just get a new building? As a matter of fact, that was mentioned in public comment today at the start of the meeting. Why don't we just, buy a new building, rent a new building somewhere? I've heard numbers like, well, $4 million to just get a new building with the same space. I don't know where we put it. It's not like we have tons of developable property that we could just plunk a building down on, but I do think the new committee, if there is a new committee, should look into that. Is that even a reasonable option? And if so, what would we do with the old building?
Thanks, Jay. Any other comments? Oh, hi.
Hi, Mike Stores. I've been to a couple of these before. I thought Lori Dana sent you a letter with her ideas of what she thought was a path forward, and I totally agree with what she said. I have one thing to add to that. I think we could do a much, much better job of communicating with the public what we're doing and why we're doing it. I had no idea this project was in the works until we started hearing there was going to be a vote on it. And then I came down, went on a tour with Jeff, and I was convinced we needed to do a lot of work. But then I looked at the handout that he gave me, and the front page of it showed we were putting trees in the parking lot and so forth. And that didn't seem like one of the things that really needed to be done. And then from there, I kind of looked in and found a number of other questions that I had of why we were doing certain things. And I've been told several times I have good answers for all those. If those questions had been foreseen and answered before the vote, I might very well have voted a different way, and I think maybe other people would as well.
Good point. Thank you.
David, I'd just like to point out to that point that for those of you who did not look at this, Lori Dana's memo of March 20th is on the website as item 3F for related files for tonight's meeting.
I think it's worth a read for everyone too. It's a pretty comprehensive synopsis of everything. Don't think I have anything to add to it. I think she hit every point. She addressed every issue with the building, with the process and points moving forward. And so I think anyone that's remotely interested should give it a read.
So David, it seems to me that the logical path forward is to have some form of resurrected committee, and that's what Lori proposes. So I know we have limited time, but one thing we might do is either just say, let's do that tonight, or come back to it tomorrow in a more, or next time in a more structured way and say, this is what we're looking for. And we could choose to simply endorse the three-part proposal that Lori rather cogently described in her memo, or something else, but maybe spend a little more time about what we expect of that committee, if we anticipate subcommittees, and then contemplate what select board membership and participation would look like.
That was my thought exactly.
Andy.
Oh. Andrew, go ahead.
Hi. I happen to listen to Jeff's explanation of the budget. I think most everybody misunderstood that he had about a $2 million added on to the actual cost to compensate for inflation, and also for cost overruns
and contingencies. Yes,
so the actual their cost there is a lot less, supposedly, and of course it costs you more or to rebuild the building, because you got to pay a person to tear it all apart and turn around and build it all back. So it costs you more to, I'm lost here for the word there, to rebuild the building. Okay.
You're thinking of renovate, Andrew? Is it?
Thank you. Thank you. Renovate a building.
I was hearing you think that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and one of the expenses that was included in that method of doing things was relocating our staff twice. I mean, once out of the building, I'm not sure where that could be arranged, and then back in. So I'm sure not much work is done during that process either. So there's a cost for paying people to essentially move their offices twice and paying for space off site. And maybe there's better ways to do that if we go a little slower. I'm not sure, but there are questions whether we have an answer of that sort in our in the files, what was done.
Thank you, Andrew. So bring this back next meeting, maybe give it some thought in the 2 weeks and look to take some direction next time.
And perhaps, David, in our front porch forum and elsewhere, we could call out the question of looking for people interested in influencing and participating on a resurrected committee.
Yeah.
Josh, where is all the work that they did? Is that in your possession or is it?
I've got, I think, a lot of it, but I can always reach out to the architects and grab most of it.
Amongst us.
Everything that came in, I filed, but I probably don't have every single piece.
Probably have a folder somewhere on your computer.
Electronic, electronic stuff. So, yeah, but I'm sure we could reach back out and grab all of it.
I assume just for the transition, we'd need someone from the original committee. to-
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
to guide.
Some participation of former committee members in the
Yeah.
new committee. That makes sense.
Okay, we're ready to move on.
I don't think they really intended to set it aside.
No. Review of commitments for the American Rescue Plan Act ARPA funds.
Share that spreadsheet.
Yeah, if you could pull up the spreadsheet. Did you want to walk us through the spreadsheet?
Sure. So I'm glad Bart, get this back there. Bart brought this up last meeting to take a look at, the select board's made a lot of motions to say what they want to spend the money on, but where we're at with actual commitments is kind of a different thing. So took a look at the number of things that we've committed to. The first column is total committed by the select board. Then the total amount under contract or spent already. So for instance, the first one, we had miscellaneous surveys and mailings. This is very early on. $2,188. We've already spent the full $2,188 on that. Then we had the cemetery fence that was approved and that was spent. Then we have things like the Bridge Street sidewalk upper construction, about $254,000. That has not been spent or under contract. So that remains to replace or spent or put under contract. So with this, sorry.
I thought we spent some money to design and engineer that.
Oh, so that's separate. Yeah.
Oh,
So,
okay.
yeah.
Oh, right underneath it.
So sidewalk upper engineering, the board committed $49,000. We have $49,000 under contract. And some of them split out. So for the sidewalk lower, this is a match on a grant. So we have $64,000. That's part of a match. That's for engineering and final design. So 19,708 is under contract for engineering and project management, but that leaves 44,292. That's the match for the construction. In these types of projects, I think the northern project we might get under contract with a contractor by the end of this year. The southern one, because it's part of a federally funded grant, there's a lot more hoops to go through. There's more permitting. There's more things that need to be satisfied for that grant. I have concerns that we'll get there by the end of this year. So total committed by the select board, 1.1 million. We have about $213,000 either spent or under contract. That leaves about $1 million that we have to get under contract or spent by the end of this year. And there's about 90,000 here that has not yet been earmarked by the select board, if you will.
So that's this calendar year, not this fiscal year.
That's the calendar year, correct. And side note that I can't speak to this in a lot of depth tonight. We've been talking with VLCT because I've heard like, okay, we claimed that there's lost revenue. I understood there's a way to transfer that into the general fund to kind of satisfy the feds that you've got this, you've spent it and claimed there's lost revenue. So VLCT, Katie Buckley gave us a good outline on that, but recommended we chat with our auditors. So we had that conversation last week with our auditors, VLCT, myself and Connie. We still have a lot more to kind of like dive into to really present it to the board, but essentially there's a way to transfer it in and say it was lost revenue to pay for, and they say you use it to pay for payroll because there's no procurement policy on payroll. And because you claim there's lost revenue, you transfer it in, then that satisfies the ARPA side of it. Then the second part of this is you would create a reserve fund that would be created by the voters at a special town meeting to then transfer that, a similar balance into that reserve fund to pay for projects that we've already identified. So there's a few steps to this that involve special meetings and voters. That's why I can't speak super in depth tonight. I need to do some more research to get my ducks in a row, but there is a way, and other towns are proceeding with doing this, to kind of extend some of these deadlines that are coming up relatively quickly, 9 months away.
I will just say often when I think creative accounting, I think of it as forensic, but in this case, it's just, I guess, creative.
I mean, it is within the structure of the way that ARPA is set up to be spent. You know, they talk about
Yeah.
costs you can offset. And that's where, you know, Katie Buckley, VLCT's recommended it to several towns. And our auditors actually said they've got 15 towns in a similar position that are saying, we're not gonna be able to spend all of this. So the conversation we had with them last week, they were very, I think, encouraged that there was, you know, because they had a lot of questions. When you sat down with Katie, a lot of those questions got answered about the mechanics of how you can make this work. They thought, oh, this could actually really help some people out, help some municipalities out. So again, we'll have more information on that because time is ticking.
So there is a way to let the cart pull the horse.
So David, it strikes me that we want to add this to our next agenda and come back to it. The key element, just to be absolutely clear, is that it removes the deadline for spending the money. That it gives us a longer time frame and so much more flexible in that regard. Which avoids the possible scenario, we've got to hurry up and spend it on something like in the next month.
Just
and
to
come up
spend
with
it.
Things, just to make sure we don't lose it, because it's use it or lose it, right?
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you, Josh.
Thanks for your creativity.
Well, thank the LCT and our auditors for their thoroughness in figuring that out.
Fortunately, we're not alone, and they asked a question that they didn't say, huh? To.
Yeah, well, initially our auditors had a lot of questions, but we had a really good conversation last week. I think there's some path forward there.
Okay. Consideration of setting a date for the Recreation Summit. Did you want to walk through this, Josh?
Sure. So this came up at the request or suggestion of the Three Parks Committee, as they've been colloquially called, to get a number of key players in the recreation community together to have a conversation, and it turned into, let's do it as a special select board meeting where we sort of invite some guests. So we reached out to the list that Fran Thomas provided, and it's trying to look at sort of an off Monday for select board, seeing as how a lot of other dates are busy with lots of other committee meetings. It looked like May 13th would be the date that most people that we reached out to could attend. Not everybody responded, but that was the majority. April 29th was the other date I put out there, and not many people were able to make that, or less people were able to make that. It's about half.
I can do May 13th.
If we set it for May 13th, that gives us some time to set the agenda, which I've worked with the committee on, get more invites out, get people to really hopefully put on their calendars 6 weeks out and have a good conversation.
7 p.m.
I was thinking 7. It works. 7 to 10 or 11.
Well,
could be a long meeting.
Just putting this out there, or just to get home earlier, 6, and maybe we provide like iced tea and pizza.
Oh, yeah.
You know, just thinking.
Two selling
people-
points.
You know, come on, we want you to work
Separate the
and
iced tea
solve
and
this,
pizza.
but if our committee took care of the logistics, that's okay with you guys?
Yeah, there's 6 work.
I could do 6.
Okay, if we get.
Does that work for you, Lisa?
6 weeks in advance, hopefully.
What do we estimate
I don't know
for
if that's
time?
quick.
Do we have any idea just off the top of our heads, or?
I feel like it's as long as it takes in order to get some decisions so that we can continue to proceed.
Is the door going to be chained from the outside until we're done?
I
Is that the-
mean, I don't
We've
want
been
to.
here till very late, and it's been okay.
Yeah.
I don't want
But
to speak for the
we
whole
always like to
committee,
try and be done by
but I
8:30
think we, through education of so many different people, I think we've come to this consensus that stop doing the same old thing, you're gonna get the same result. So we need to be a little more creative, and is it possible to build up on where the band shell is right now?
Mm.
Because, I mean, look how much money you guys have put in the last 3 floods.
Yeah.
And the time and the hours, and So, and I know Richmond's rules and regulations for building are stricter than FEMA's. So that's why we thought that a FEMA rep here would be a good person to have on the list as well.
Yeah.
So, just to have everybody in the room to say, oh, we could do that, or no, we can't do that. And just get it done once and for all, so that we can move forward to what's gonna go there. But I think we're all, it's useless spending that money and wasting the town's money.
6 to 10-ish.
I think that's about right.
Oh my gosh.
We always aim for 8:30.
I would say 9, 6 to 9.
6 to 9.
And if we get done earlier, perfect.
Pizza and coffee?
Yeah, exactly.
6 to 9.
Okay.
Do we need a
I'm
motion?
gonna
or
send
anything?
out a date on that, or what date was that?
That's May 13th. I'll send out
Okay.
another email to that same list that you were included on, Pete, probably tomorrow or Wednesday, and as a save the date, and then we'll finalize the agendas.
And make sure we have the space. What space?
Yeah, in here. I'm pretty, I
There's
checked to
a
make sure it
lot
was,
of people.
yeah.
Yeah.
You don't know what?
In the
Oh, no, I think this space with the Zoom attendance, I
Yeah.
think will be,
Yeah, 'cause
I mean, we did that Andrews community meeting in this space with Zoom, and that was really well attended. I think we'll be okay.
What's the fire chief allow for occupancy?
There is a number, yeah,
It's more than-
113.
yes, I don't think
Is
it's
that
that
with
high.
sprinklers or without?
We have a fireman right here, to put a small pocket for us. But anyway, I think we'll
We're
probably
qualified nor insured to make that.
be all right.
So do we need a formal motion on that, or is that just?
I think it's consensus.
I think you guys
Yeah.
should,
And Josh, did you want to talk about the follow-up on the process for preserving Browns Court for recreation?
Sure. So after that last meeting, I reached out to both Vermont Land Trust and Richmond Land Trust. Vermont Land Trust had a good conversation with Bob Heiser, but he determined, it's probably a little too small, kind of outside of their general scope of what they usually do. I had a conversation with Jeremy Hoff from Richmond Land Trust. He hasn't spoken to his board yet, but on the surface, it looks like something that they'd be interested in. At least he said he's interested in it. He had to bring it back to the full board. He said that we could do a limited amount of term. He thought like 20 years would probably be too short, but 50 years could potentially work. And you could structure it in a couple different ways where it just goes away after 50 years, or you have to have a town vote after 50 years to remove
decide.
it. Yeah, so you can set higher bars to get there if you like. My notes, I know I'm missing a couple things. He said the easement could be just for the commercial residential development rights. The town could retain recreational development rights. That way it leaves it in the hands of the select board of, you want to build a hockey rink, you want to build a pickleball court, where does that fit for you? And the only cost to the town for the easement, they usually do a stewardship fund, which a lot of times is for like land management. But since the town would still be managing the land, that would be set aside for sort of legal defense. So if in 20, 30 years, somebody says, we're gonna go build housing there anyway, well, then the land trust has some money to pull on to defend that part of the easement.
So the few conversations I've had have led me to conclude that we're much clearer about what we don't want to have into the future. Like, I'll just guess 30 years ago, it would have been hard to predict pickleball will be a candidate. So what are people going to want for recreational activities 50 or 100 years from now? I don't think that we could anticipate or predict that.
A virtual reality park where you can put your goggles on and pretend you're.
So, but I think if I just think about the history of this, so it went to the Richmond Baseball Association. It was called the playing field, the ball field. It sort of morphed over time into somewhat more than just a baseball field, softball, etc. But I think the issue is maybe not that it's baseball or softball. And by the way, it's clear baseball had a very big heyday in the 20s and 30s in Richmond, right? In particular. But I think it perhaps focus on what we don't want, which is commercial and residential development. I think that's what is clear. But it might be simpler if we drafted something, if we had kind of a straw man easement that people could comment on, because right now it's still open-ended conceptual, right? And frame something like that, contemplate like a clause where it is an easement, but it could be revoted by the town voters at some point. That's what the proposal here was anyway.
Yeah.
And then have a discussion that's specific about that, more like a public hearing for a regulation or ordinance, and then you get feedback on the language and keep it or modify it. How's that sound?
Yeah.
Good discussion.
I'm
don't
fine
know
with
if
that, Bard.
this
I think
conversation.
I can hear what Jay said.
I was just saying, I think that's a reasonable way forward. I mean, Zorgball, which doesn't even exist yet, could be the big thing 50 years from now. So I think the way what you laid out makes sense.
Is it possible, Denise Barnard again, is
Furball.
it possible that seeing how it's been there for 120 years, is it possible to do 100-year easement?
Possible.
I
Yeah,
don't see why not.
I think whatever term we want.
None of us are likely to be here.
Yeah, you're right.
Certainly won't
I
be.
doubt any of us will be.
But 100 years is one of Jeremy's suggestions, as he said 20 years would be too short, 50 or 100 would be better. I have no problem with 100.
You know, since it's already been there for 120-ish, because
Yeah.
1906, 7.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So
I would be inclined to do at least 50. None of us, 45 years down the road, something could come up. We could vote to terminate it. I like the idea that we would have an out at some point. It's the third bullet. It's line 141 and 142 in the packet. The term limit could also be structured so after a set number of years, the town could vote to terminate the easement. I think that's reasonable to say, well, easement is 450 or 100, but after 30 years, 20 years, pick a number, we would have the right to terminate the easement if it wasn't working to our best interest.
You can also do these to automatically renew absent objection.
Yes.
So what about for next steps, if one of us volunteers to meet with Josh and the attorney and come up with a crafted draft easement language?
Yeah.
Just to move this forward, and then arguably that shouldn't be that complex a task, but what do I know?
Yeah, I know they're gonna have some questions about, they're gonna wanna do a lot of deed research to make sure they fully understand.
Billable hours. I mean,
Well, they wanna make sure they understand like
Yeah, those are.
what is allowed there now, what restrictions are in place.
Yeah.
I guess, how far down that do we want them to get going now versus like, are you looking for more like, hey, this is sort of sample easement, is this generally good? And then we kind of pass that bar, and then because it's gonna, like you said, billable hours. They could spend a lot of time for a 100+ year-old property.
Here's how I was thinking about it. We don't want them to set the guardrails. We're
Right.
setting the guardrails and to
Yeah.
say,
That's what I'm asking.
make sure we can live within these guardrails.
we could spend
I-
$10,000 and be where we are now.
I don't think we need to go personally beyond the Richmond Baseball Association getting this, whatever it was, 1906, 7, 8, somewhere in there. I don't think we need to go back to like the first white person to own that land ever.
And it can easily go there.
And it could.
So some deed research to get to this sample easement, though, we're envisioning at least some, so they have a general understanding of what they could put into that easement.
I think we have a conceptual conversation, but this is what we're thinking. This is what we know of the history. What due diligence are you gonna need to do, and how much is it gonna be, and how much is it gonna cost?
And
Before
then,
we just say. go
Yeah,
do it and set it.
that's what I want to avoid.
Denise?
I was thinking that if we could just present the survey that Haggerty did, and then we could present the ordinance that hopefully you guys are gonna pass tonight on the parks. I think that answers any question that they could possibly have. Later in the agenda tonight, you're voting on the new parks recommendation. What's it called? I'm sorry. Oh, yeah.
I don't, is that the,
That's right.
no, that'll be the next meeting. That's the overnight parking.
Yeah,
That was
so,
the last.
yeah,
meeting.
the municipal park ordinance. And
That's-
so next meeting, if you could present that.
Yeah.
Haggerty survey. And the research that man did and the hours that you've already paid for.
Yeah, that's a good.
It was
point.
incredible.
Do you have a copy of his, did he write all that up? Cause I was at that meeting.
It's on tape. It's at
Okay.
a meeting. He did the whole presentation.
Did he have a write up of that or just?
Oh,
He'll,
Actual survey?
Chris will give you he can send us over.
Yeah, you should have
the whole
that.
document.
Yeah,
I don't know that we received it.
If we don't have it.
He like.
but you
Yeah.
were the purchaser, so I'm sure you have it.
Definitely.
yeah, well, I don't have it, but I can get it.
Yeah.
I just didn't know if you guys had a copy of the
No,
committee.
We don't.
Alright,
We have his audio presentation that he did.
All right,
So that's a follow-up, because it would be
Yeah.
ideal to have it in writing with his.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you're
If
right, that
there's
was.
anything
yeah.
that our committee could help you with, because Josh, I know you're swamped. If there's anything that we could help you with,
Okay,
give us some work and make us do some
Get the
writing.
thing from Haggerty.
well, I can, I know Chris too, I can, like, I can do it. He probably has notes.
$200 an hour.
But I think you're right, Haggerty's research is great, that plus the
His
ordinance,
research
that at least gives it, our attorney a place to start,
Right,
Linda had done a bunch of research too
does
for
have
the
actual,
post
yeah,
yeah.
on Front Porch Forum.
right, Linda has, okay.
I think there's some like legalities around who does the research and.
Yeah, and I think
It's hard,
Haggerty's,
and Chris is
he
qualified
notes
to do
books
that.
Mm.
and paragraphs and all that, so his
Yeah.
actual.
And it's cited and annotated.
Yeah,
and-
not that Linda's not
Oh,
qualified.
yeah,
to
yeah,
do it,
yeah.
but I think legally having a surveyor or a
Yeah.
attorney do it is required.
All right, good.
We already paid Chris to do it, so.
I'll pay him twice.
All right, we got a lot of, so,
So that's next steps on that, I
Yeah.
think.
did we want to appoint a select board member to meet with me and an attorney to go through things?
I'm willing to do it.
Bard wants to do it.
All right, makes sense that. Okay. Good. I can follow up on,
Ready to talk about a porta-potty at Brown's Court?
love to.
What color?
I moved to it.
Careful about those movements.
Yeah, and then I've got some comments on that.
Porta potty.
So,
I just hate one of those things, it changed the taste.
so as you know, I wear both the Little League president hat as well as town manager. And one of our recent board meetings, we were talking about expenses for the league. And it came up that, we spend about $850 or so per year on porta potty at Brown's Court. And that's sort of grown over the years. You look back 3 or 4 years ago, all we did up there for Little League was like April, May, part of June, softball. After that, we were done. As we started doing more all-stars and summer baseball and fall ball, space became tight at Volunteers Green, so we kept the porta potty up there. So my board asked me, would we ask the town if the town could pay for a porta potty? Because not just Little League uses it, but the seniors up there playing softball, there's other people utilizing the park. So could that at least be partially a town expense? I know we don't have it in the budget. That's why I also want to ask, because we have a very small recreation budget, just maybe a couple $1,000s for some general maintenance things. So a regular porta potty is about $840. I'm looking like April to the end of October. If we had an ADA accessible porta potty, that would be about $1,470. These are numbers through P&P Septic. And I'm sure the committee could weigh in. I think a longer term solution would be an actual restroom up there, but that's probably not going to happen this year. So I'll leave it at that. I'm sure there's.
Denise?
And I guess I'm gonna speak to the committee and please, you three, help me if I. So one of the big things that kept coming up, at both parks, actually, up at Brown's Court, there's a lot of elderly people using it now because it's more of a flat surface. So if they have a wheelchair or a walker or a cane, they need more space. So they're asking for a handicap. And then down at Volunteers Green, they're also asking for a handicap down there, the same thing,
Close to the playground.
close to the playground. By the time the child says, "Mommy, I gotta go to the bathroom," they've already peed themselves halfway down. So that the mom and or the dad can go in with the child. And there's been a lot of farmers markets attendees asking for handicap bathrooms so that they can get in.
Yeah.
Denise, that's not always the case. Sometimes your toddler pees on the tree.
That's how I've learned.
It's awkward during a farmer's market, but.
Hey. So both of those things have come up numerous times over all our meetings, and The Richmond Senior Committee, that's a request from them as well.
David J has.
Go ahead, Jay.
Yeah, I unfortunately am the bearer of a awkward counterpoint. Last year for the July 4th celebration, we had several porta potties dropped off before the event and chained shut so that they would be available for the July 4th event. People involved with the farmers market cut the locks off and absolutely wrecked them. People, they were, you don't even want to imagine how bad it was to look inside. I certainly like the idea of having porta potties at Browns Court and at Volunteers Green, but they're going to have to be checked every single day if we want them to be usable. And I don't know how much that cost is going to be, but unfortunately, the tragedy of the commons is still a concept. Porta John that nobody is directly responsible for is going to wind up looking like hell, and people are not going to want to use it.
I think in this fee, the Porta John company, P&P, checks it once a week, pumps it, does some cursory cleaning. And I know when we had a porta potty down at Browns Court during COVID, I think it was during the winter.
Volunteers Green.
Sorry, Volunteers Green. I think it was during the winter because we knew people were going to use it during COVID more. We asked Karen to clean it daily, and I don't think it cost us a lot more. She's the one who cleaned the restrooms on there anyway. So I could ask her to clean this and the one at the Browns Court. It wouldn't be a lot more per week. It would take her a few minutes.
Yeah, I might be wrong. I might be pleasantly wrong.
No, you're right. I think it would get dirty.
It's the nature of the beast.
Yes.
Well, so that's one experience that I'm trying to be clear. Maybe I misunderstand. Could you repeat what has the Little League actually purchased in the past?
So the Little League has gotten just a regular non-ADA accessible, which I think was about $840 for the year.
For what period of time?
From like April through October.
And what location?
Up at Browns Court, and we put it more towards that shed, towards the baseball field. That's where Little League was playing.
So our one case study is that, and what was our experience with that porta potty at that location?
I didn't go into it a lot.
The tree man.
I wasn't up there too much. And I think I maybe got a couple of phone calls that it was dirty. Usually I'll get more calls about like, hey, it's a mess. I didn't get a ton of feedback. It really needed a lot of work.
Well, what if we did this? What if I think it's appropriate, especially given our sort of closer embrace of Browns Court. It was my experience, frankly, of coaching softball up there back in the day. It was like the forgotten stepchild, you know, it was in very bad shape for a certain period of time. So if we bring it closer into our embrace as a recreational field and park, it seems appropriate to contemplate bathroom facilities in the form of a porta potty. And then if we have problems, we could revisit that. But I think you're right also to include it in an ongoing check that is part of somebody's duty, intermittently at least, to go check it out and replace the toilet paper and whatever other maintenance is required.
And if we have a need for a porta potty and we're spending minimally $1,470 for the porta potty plus paying Karen to drive up and clean it, I think it would make sense to explore putting in a permanent facility.
If only we had a committee that was dealing with this kind of thing.
And it is on the water sewer line, so.
They looked into it, right? A little bit?
No, we will.
Oh, you will.
We will.
And
Sorry.
full disclosure, there will be maintenance and upkeep expenses in addition to the outlay of the capital expense of construction. But it would also have to be winterized and summerized and. And
Doesn't have to be flood proof though.
that's true. Pete?
Do we know how to do that?
Just something to consider, especially Browns Court, like you said, there is water and sewer. You can purchase mobile restrooms. They're trailer mounted. They have a full running water sink and a real bathroom inside of them. They're tow behind. I don't know what the cost of these things are, but that could be a first step towards something permanent at Browns Court. Definitely wouldn't want to put it in Volunteers Green because it's just going to end up in an Essex floodway. But up there, I mean, it makes sense. If you're you're gonna do a season-long porta potties, I mean, these are obviously much nicer. I just looked it up. I mean, I've been in these before. Like you go to some of these big fairs and they got those nice mobile trailer mounted restrooms.
Yeah.
I have no idea the cost of those things, but that could buy you quite a few years before you're ready to build a facility, just something to think about.
Thanks, Pete.
So maybe let's look at costs. I was thinking porta potty has advantages because while you can mess them up, they're hard to break. And my limited experience with those trailer options is they're easy to break. There's stuff in there that's much more breakable. It assumes like you're at a wedding or a fair or something where,
They're harder to tip though.
yeah, there's that.
Well,
So maybe
the porta
contemplate the
and the
different
porta
costs.
potties are 4 weeks at a time. So if we
Yeah.
order a porta potty in 3 months, we say, oh, we're gonna buy this thing.
Just
You
cancel
just
it.
stop the porta potty. We don't have to commit to it.
As a pilot, that might be the first, because we've had some experience with porta potty up there. It appears not overly negative.
Yeah.
And arguably, if we have a restroom permanent facility on the radar that we might seek to do sooner rather than later, that might be sooner rather than later, like not 5 years out, but
Yeah.
like.
Yeah.
Assuming we get an extension, maybe a year out.
So if we do the porta potty at Browns Court, I know baseball will want it up near the shed, near first base. But others might want it more near the entrance for dog walking and easy access. Where would, if the board's gonna have town money pay for it, where would you like the porta potty?
In between.
I think it's up to the town manager.
Which, so 2 porta potties. One for the town, one for the league.
I think it would be between third base and the entrance.
That makes sense. Split the difference. I like that. Okay, and then do we want to contemplate one at Volunteers Green? I think that is a good idea down near the
river.
Yeah, well, yeah, down near the playground. And Pete has his hand up. He might have more input there, but that it would get used. I'm sure of it.
Go ahead, Pete.
Oh, maybe he's done.
Oh, your hand is
That's
down.
all right. I forgot to take it down, but yeah, it would have to be down near the playground for sure.
Yeah.
Probably more like at the toe of the band shell embankment, just so it's like
Yeah.
kind of between the band shell and the actual playground.
Do we want it up by the band shell where it won't float away?
Well,
Good question.
I mean, Pete, in the past, we've put it right there by the parking area.
Yeah.
Right, like if you drive in, it's sort of like the corner where the park road kind of comes around.
The Richmond.
Yeah, hopefully if we have a day's heads up of a flood, we'll get it out of there, but you don't always have a day's heads up.
So that parking lot has 2 hashed out corners.
Yes,
dead-
it does.
Dead spots, so it'd be a good spot, it'd be on pavement.
My big
ADA
recommendation-
accessible,
Having a lot of experience with job site porta potties is put it somewhere in the shade. That would
Yes.
be the biggest.
Great
And the
idea.
number-
Those maple trees.
People will walk further to go to the shade in porta potty.
Well, then we'll find a spot near the playground, that's in the shade, and that's a good, yeah, we'll figure that out. All right,
Yeah, really good point there.
great.
Okay.
You want to make a motion that we do that, or general consensus good for me to go spend $1,000 in 2 spots on the porta potty?
Yes.
All right, we'll do it. Thank you. The Little League Board, thanks you as well.
Now you want to talk about a contractor for grounds maintenance?
Oh, I'd love to. Okay, so grounds maintenance, the history of this, as we talked about Pete's ability to do more road work, that came with doing less grounds maintenance. So we've subbed this out now. I think this is we've done it for 2 years in a row. Last year we had more, they were a great, they did a really good job. We had a lot of public feedback this year from Browns Court to Volunteers Green, and especially up at the cemetery. There was some mowing that maybe wasn't being done exactly the way they wanted it to be done. We had a nice big meeting with the owner of Mow and Maintain, and cemetery commissioners walked through, determined what the problems were, really satisfied everybody at the end of the meeting, and they did a phenomenal job moving forward. So as we have to, we went out for a bid on this. We received 4 bids. The low bid was from Steel Met. They were, let me make sure I get my right numbers here. They were at 30,000. Nope. Summary. So Gilmet Landworks came in at $30,180. The concern from Linda was that they had done some cemeteries in the past, I think over in Williston, and they didn't do a really good job. So Duncan followed up with Williston. They said that, yeah, it was about 3 years ago or so. There was number of issues with them. I think they knocked over some stones, is what it said. And just the general mowing around. Yeah, the stones was not good. Yeah, knocking over, damaging some of the grave sites. You got other references, more like big, large areas like Camp Johnson. They've seemed to have been doing a decent job there. When Duncan followed up with Gilmet, they said, yeah, that was about 3 years ago. They've sort of grown as a company since then. They think that they would do a better job. But the Cemetery Commission is still rather skeptical and concerned based on it was only 3 years ago. The Cemeteries Commission, Cemetery's recommendation is to go back to mow and maintain because they really like working with them. The next bid that we have next highest is Wagner's. They're at $35,000. Duncan got some positive feedback from them, from references he called for them, Hawks Nest and St. Albans and Lake Point Properties. They did a good job, seemed very knowledgeable and responsible. No specific cemetery references there, but it seems like overall they did a good job. And then mow and maintain is just $1,000 more than Wagner's. They're at $36,000, and we've got a good track record with mow and maintain. Duncan, who's dealt with this the most, he's sort of the point person on it. You know, I think he'd like to go back to mow and maintain, just knowing that they were really good to work with and they did really kind of whatever we looked for. I would tend to go with the low bid, but I do have concerns that, you know, because I feel they put in the bid, they feel they can do the work, they're going to show up, they're going to get the work done. But cemetery specific issues with Gilmet only a couple of years ago, I have concerns that we might have to refight battles that we sort of have resolved last year.
I look at this like a three-legged stool. You've got the low bid, you've got feedback, and you've got a good working relationship. And they, in my opinion, they should all carry equal weight. I would be hesitant to go with a low bid with a questionable recent history with cemetery mowing. And so in my opinion, it comes down to, is it worth $1,000 to take a gamble and save $1,000, or do we maintain a good relationship that's been built for the past year?
Is Duncan still here?
Should be. He's taking notes.
He's not. No, so in order to save his time, he usually just watches the video the next day. But what question do you have? He asked me if he needed to be here tonight. I said, you may not need to be because it'll be a little bit later, but I was close enough with it that I could maybe answer the question.
I was gonna ask what his perspective is. It's mow and
I think
maintain.
his perspective is mow and maintain. He worked with them really closely last year. He really liked working with them. Anytime there was a question or a comment or a concern, Nick jumped right on it and fixed it. They were super responsive.
It's worth some of his time to not have problems come up, you know, from them. So
Yeah,
There's-
as a subcontract, if I was hiring a subcontractor, that $1,000 could easily evaporate pretty quick in lost
with remedial work.
maintenance.
Plus there's a learning
hassle and
curve
all
with
that.
it.
And I would go with the known quantity that I'm confident would do the job for $1,000.
And the low bidder, we have some
Yeah.
concerns about based on
Yeah.
feedback. And it may not be fair, but it's not like it's 10 years ago.
Yeah.
It's several years ago.
And that's a big,
Running over gravestones.
Yeah, it didn't sound insignificant.
Yeah.
They might have solved it. Hopefully they did. But,
Yeah, what I like to
couple of
see
years
is,
we can.
yeah, if they mow another cemetery this summer and they get great feedback, then I'd say I would really consider them, or if they could provide us with like, oh, we did this other thing that's similar and we did a great job.
Put the burden on them to prove they can do it. but
That's
let's try to
sort of
believe it.
where I would go.
yeah.
So David, if
David?
you're ready, Bard.
David?
Go ahead, Jay.
I just wanted to chime in that, well, first Pete's got his hand up, but I was prepared to make the motion. So,
Okay.
I'm gonna go ahead and move to hire mow and maintain for grounds maintenance and an amount not to exceed 36,000.
Okay,
Is
we're gonna
Bard, I'll
go.
second that.
Okay, thanks, Bard. So motion made by Jay to go with mow and maintain, seconded by Bard. Pete, go ahead.
There we go. No, I just wanted to add, let's look at last year. That's about as trying of a year as you can get for mowing. I mean, we had more rain than we've ever had. And I don't think they got a lot of complaints. And I know Linda was extremely happy with the work around the town center. And Mary Hool gave multiple compliments about them.
Right.
So we know, for Mary to give a compliment, they've got to do an outstanding job. So I think you're going the right way. I think you want to go with what you know you're going to get for your dollar.
Thanks, Pete. Yeah, my 2 cents, I'm 20% of the board, but I think for $1,000, we'd be foolish to take a gamble.
I agree.
Okay.
Okay, so the motion has been made by Jay and seconded by Bard to award the contract to mow and maintain for ground maintenance at an amount not to exceed, what was it, 35,100?
36.
36,100.
36 even.
Oh, 30, so
Yeah.
it's $900. No, $1,000.
$1,000 difference between them and the next lowest.
Don't listen to me. Okay.
This is Jay. I.
Adam, I.
Bard, aye. Lisa, aye.
And David, I. And I want to thank Mow and Maintain for doing a wonderful job and giving us the confidence to hire them back and not go with the lowest bidder.
Being consistent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, next is the consideration of closing Esplanade Street for the Eclipse on April 8th. Gee, that's coming right up, isn't it? To prevent overflow park traffic from accessing the residential street. So this came before the board because there was a concern based on past incidences of high preference public activities and people parking on Esplanade. I talked about this with Josh. I had concerns, first of all, for safety. When rescue has to go to the park because somebody's dehydrated and falls and twists their ankle or there's a medical emergency, they need to be able to get to the park to provide the emergency services and also to leave, and that might involve going down Esplanade. Also, we have the surge treatment plant at the end of Esplanade, and we can't have the big trucks being blocked by cars blocking the road, and also the safety of the people living on Esplanade. If I lived on Esplanade and I had a medical emergency and personnel couldn't get to my house, I'd be a little upset. Josh, did you want to add to that?
No, I think you covered the concerns.
Okay. So like the memo explains, we can handle this in-house with sawhorses and signage provided by Highway and Police Chief Anthony Cambridge will have a police officer checking in on the street throughout the day to ensure the closure is being adhered to and the street remains passable. Any questions or comments before asking for a vote? Okay.
David.
I guess I need a motion first.
I move to close Esplanade Street on Monday, April 8th, 2024 from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. to prevent vehicles from using the street attempting to access Volunteers Green during the eclipse. The closure will not pertain to water and wastewater staff, septic haulers needing access to the wastewater treatment facility, or first responders.
Okay, thank you, Jay. Do we have a second?
Question. Jay, did you say 3 p.m.?
4 p.m.
Okay. I thought you heard 3.
Do we have a second?
Adam, second.
Thank you, Adam. So the motion was made by Jay to close Esplanade Street on Monday, April 8th from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. to prevent vehicles from using the street attempting to access Volunteers Green during the eclipse. This closure will not pertain to water and wastewater staff, septic haulers needing to access the wastewater treatment facility or first responders. Before asking for a vote on this, do we think 4 p.m. is a late enough closure, or should we push that ahead maybe to 5?
I think 4 p.m. I don't think people are gonna be sticking around that much.
Yeah, there's no reason for any further traffic to congest there.
I would imagine by 4 p.m. people would already be where they want to be to watch the event. They can't see traffic after that. I just had to ask.
They will be wherever they are by that time. My question is, I'm not sure how the signage is clear for septic haulers.
Yeah, so people are gonna put it off to one side till it's closed, and then Steve will communicate with septic haulers.
Okay.
That you can
Just
get it.
ignore the road closed.
Yes, except for you. You know a guy.
You know,
I imagine they gotta be planning on this, right? They gotta be expecting delays everywhere and possibly considering not hauling that day. I would think.
Yeah,
Like,
they can avoid it.
every
think
subcontractor and person I work with is like, we're not working that day.
Yeah.
Yeah, and imagine.
And they just drive around.
a truck, a huge truck.
Yeah, we're closing at noon that day for the town
Yeah.
center and for water wastewater, just
I
to
guess
try
it's
to
on them.
keep it, to reduce traffic, get everybody home.
It's up to them, but yeah, my advice is don't show up.
I would say, yeah.
Stuck somewhere for 8 hours in a septic truck. but-
The other thing is, if there are septic haulers going down Volunteers Green, do we want them going around parked cars in the dark?
Ooh, do they have headlights? Maybe not.
Well,
Headlights,
again,
but not streetlights.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna be closing at noon anyway, so they won't be able to,
Well,
we're not gonna accept anymore. And I think they're, like, to your point.
oh, so the wastewater is closing at noon, so they won't be able to accept anymore.
Right, we're gonna close the town offices at noon on that day.
That kind of mitigates
To
the problem.
avoid congestion as much as we can.
Yeah.
Details. Great.
In addition to that road close sign, I asked Linda to put her sandwich boards out to, tell people that the town center is additional Eclipse parking. So we're trying to split the parking up between Volunteers Green and there so people can walk down to the park. and view the-
Walk?
Well, it's not that far, but
It's downhill.
it gives them an alternative so they don't just try to turn down the street. They see a sign that says additional parking and they go up there. So hopefully
Yeah.
the honest ones will go there.
I
Yeah.
can see people walking from Overrockers, honestly.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's not, I mean, it's gonna be busy.
Yeah.
It's gonna be real busy.
Yeah,
People are
yeah.
gonna have to be real patient.
About a third of Vermont's population is gonna show up. That's not.
The weather is supposed to be pretty good.
It's
Yeah,
good,
yeah,
Pretty
better
good.
than it looked a couple days ago.
Great for everyone visiting.
I think
but
it's supposed to be sunny, then
but,
not sunny, then sunny again.
Yeah.
Yes.
Clouds at 3:30.
Awesome.
Scattered darkness.
All right.
No, seriously, though, we are pretty lucky with that extended forecast because it's not usually that sunny on April 8th.
Yeah, lucky.
They've been.
Okay, are we ready for a vote?
Yes,
Sounds like we're
sir.
ready for a vote.
J.I.
Adam,
Bart, I.
Lisa, I.
And David, I. Hey, let's talk about preparing for the eclipse.
We just did.
It's supposed to be sunny that day.
Did you hear about the shift? The sun like got wide or something and not as many towns are gonna be on the complete darkness?
The path, the calculated path is shifted by about 1,000 yards in some places.
Right. Which
Their
is.
calculations were not as good as they thought.
We're-
But these are places that would have been on the edge of totality. It does not affect us.
Right.
Yeah, we're right in the
So
middle.
instead of getting 30 seconds totality, they might get 3.
More like that, yeah.
At the office this morning, I guess there was this April Fool's joke on Facebook where they were saying that astronomers goofed and the path of totality is going to be off the East Coast. So everybody was bummed. And I was like, guys, it's an April Fool's joke. So then later they were talking about the 2 to 3 feet of snow we're supposed to get. Ha ha ha. I'm like, no, that one's real.
We're just saying that to keep people away.
Let's go Vermont.
So Josh, you want to talk about all the steps we're taking to be prepared for the big eclipse?
Yeah, so Pete covered some of them with the park, as far as like, we'll have it open for parking, we'll have some signage up as far as where you're able to go park. We're also gonna be putting some grade stakes up on the right-hand side to further encourage people to not park on the right side of the park road. Cause
Hey,
you're only
can't park
supposed to
here.
park on the left. People start seeing it during farmer's market, people start parking on the right-hand side, all of a sudden you're down to one lane in and out. So we'll put grade stakes up with some additional laminated, no parking this side of the road to keep people out of there. We'll add that the QR code that has the map. We'll add that to the park so you can see where you can park. Let's see, we've got the website set up about, where to be able to go, where not to go. And we've got glasses available at the town clerk's office. They were still available at the end of the day today, so whoever needs glasses can stop there. But I think the biggest thing is really just remind people to be patient. Like, there's gonna be traffic. We're not gonna be able to do anything about that there's traffic. So, get there early, stay late. If you have friends coming in from out of town, encourage them to come up a day or so in advance and stay through till Tuesday. I think back to Jay's comments often about the last eclipse, or what, it took you 2 hours to get there and 17 hours or something ridiculous to get home.
Pretty much.
So, yeah, I think just be smart.
Jay still has nightmares about the big eclipse.
You're not, you're not actually kidding. It was terrible. My father-in-law was in the back seat making stupid ass dad jokes the whole way.
Challenge accepted.
So yeah, should be fun.
Yeah.
Okay. Make it count. I don't think we're gonna be around for the next one.
Not in Vermont, we won't.
Yeah.
Like what, 100 years or 85 years from now?
I will be 110, so I don't think I'll be here.
Medical advances, you never know.
Preservatives?
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, discussion of select board member representation on the police governance committee. Josh, you want to talk about this?
So this committee, it meets, I'd say, fairly sporadically, kind of as needed with Heinsberg. We started off meeting fairly regularly and then ended up in a contract with Heinsberg instead of a union municipal district, and Heinsberg was working on a police study. We've met a couple times over the last few months. We should meet again here shortly to discuss some next steps with Heinsberg. But Jay has asked, I think since we started, we've had the select board chair on the committee, but not really like a hard and fast rule if that's who it has to be. But Jay, I think we might be looking to move on from the committee, so he wanted to bring it up tonight. I'll let Jay talk
Right.
about it.
I just think it's appropriate that the select board chair, even if it's not a hard and fast rule, be on the committee. I think Bard brings a lot with his experience in a variety of areas, but I think that I don't bring as much now that I'm not chair. David, I really just think you should be on the committee.
Not my choice.
I'd agree.
I mean, if you don't want to be David, I can stay on it. I just think that you
I
should have the
can, I
option.
just
Yeah.
don't think it should be an automatic.
Would you want to do it?
Yeah.
I wouldn't not want to do it.
I think it does lend a little bit of, not credibility, but shows the seriousness with which we take the committee to have the chair on there always.
Okay.
If they bring a chair, we should bring a chair.
Arms race.
Tried to lose, but.
Don't bring a whip to a chair fight. Stool to a chair fight.
So Josh, would we need a motion? We don't have a motion in the packet.
I don't know if we had a
I
motion.
think we do it
can,
by consensus.
Sure.
right?
That's
Like-
totally fine.
change it up. All right.
Would you like me to stay on that?
Yeah.
Then there's a
Yes.
related collective bargaining.
I didn't even think of that.
All right.
I only mention it because it is related.
Yeah,
And just for the record, do I understand that we officially, as of yesterday, have no employees at all of the police department?
That is correct. Officer Kevin Wilson has resigned. His last day was yesterday, and he was our last remaining officer, albeit on military leave for the last number of months. But yes, we no longer have any active officers.
And we continue actively recruiting. So,
and negotiating.
yeah, so we have sort of three different parts. That's where I'm going. We have, so if we deal with this Heinsberg committee, then there's collective bargaining, and then there's involvement in recruitment interviewing. And
Right.
Jay has been involved in both of those.
Right, but I already handed that over to David, the interviewing.
Okay.
And as far as collective bargaining, the reason I didn't bring that up is because I think at some point we had to submit our collective bargaining team to the union. And it would be easier for David to pick up the Heinsberg thing than it would to just step in the middle of the negotiations. That said, if he wants to, I'm happy to step out of the way.
I've done it the last two times. I don't mind sitting this one out.
I agree. I think it makes sense to sort of, as you described, Jay, I just wanted to be overt about it, especially for the benefit of Adam, who's like, what are these three things? There's collective bargaining, there's sort of discussions with Heinsberg about collaboration, which includes hiring or town managers and select board reps, and then hiring.
Three interconnected but independent.
Yeah.
Activities, yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Consideration of adopting, I can't see tonight.
2024.
Approving the 2024 local emergency operations plan. The draft has been reviewed and approved by the Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission. In that process, they noted that they had more current maps on file to include in the plan, and those have been added to the plan. The plan is included in the packet. Any questions before asking for a motion? Ready for a
No.
motion?
This is Bard. I move to adopt the town of Richmond local emergency management plan for 2024.
Thank you, Bard.
This
Do
is
we have a
Jay, I
second?
second. Jay seconds.
I think Lisa has it.
That's right.
Oh, darn.
Okay, motion made by Bard, seconded by Lisa. Any further discussion? Hearing none, calling the motion to a vote, please identify yourself and signify your vote.
Jay, I.
Adam, I.
Bart, aye. Lisa, aye.
David, I. That carries us through the main part of our warned agenda. Moving on to approval of minutes, warrants, and purchase orders. I'll start with asking for a motion to approve the minutes of the March 18th meeting.
Make a motion, we approve the minutes of the March 18th meeting as written.
Thank you, Adam. Do we have a second?
This is Bart, I'll second that.
Thank you, Bard. Motion made by Adam Wood, seconded by Bard Hill to accept the draft minutes of the March 18th Select Board meeting. Any discussions, suggestions of edits, corrections? Hearing none, calling the motion to a vote. Please
This is
identify
J-
yourself and signify your vote.
This is Jay, I.
Adam, I.
Bart, aye. Lisa, aye.
And David, I. Motion has passed unanimously. Warrants, everybody look at the warrants?
Can we do POs and then warrants? I got a couple of things to explain on the warrants.
Sure. Did you want to bring up the purchase orders?
Yeah, let me just get them in order here. Okay.
So this is purchase order 4866, and this is for the Jericho Road project and also the, what was that, the 2005 fire truck? Yeah, 2005 fire truck. We don't have the truck anymore, but we still have the note.
I think we still have truck.
Isn't that the one we just sold?
No, we saw that.
Yeah, I think
Oh,
we
we still,
still have
okay.
that.
That's the
Working on-
2002 we got rid of.
And but I'm gonna total up the 74,6556 plus the 332.6.
Yeah, Josh is breaking this up because part of this is water and sewer, and the rest is the rest of the Jericho Road and the fire truck.
So the total amount for the select board portion of this is $7,798.16.
Okay, so can we have a motion to approve purchase order hidden by Jay for $7,798.16?
What was
Uh,
the total? Oh, I'll make that. What was the total?
Oh, sorry.
17?
7,798,16.
Yeah, let me get it now. Sorry about that.
And it's purchase order 4866.
Mr. Chairman, purchase order 4866 to the US Bank for $7,798.16. Move we approve that.
Thank you, Lisa.
This is Bart, I'll second that.
Thank you, Barb. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none. So Adam, this is broken down because part of that project was water and sewer and the rest is the town. So water and sewer approved their portion at a meeting earlier tonight, and this is the other part. Okay, hearing no further discussion, calling the motion to a vote, please identify yourself and signify your vote.
Jay, I.
Adam, I.
Bart, aye.
Lisa, aye.
And David, I. We have approved that purchase order. Next is purchase order 4867. This is for the Millet Street project. This is also broken down between highway and water sewer. So Josh, what's the portion that we're,
So the highway portion is.
oh, it's already broken down
Yeah,
there.
It's two line items. So $7,045.80 is the portion for the general fund or the highway fund.
Make a motion, we approve purchase order 4867 for the select board portion of $7,045.80.
Thank you, Adam. Do we have a second?
This is Bart, I will second that.
Thank you, Bard. So this is a motion to approve purchase order 4867 for the highway portion of the project for $7,045.80. Any further discussion? Hearing none, calling the motion to a vote, please identify yourself and signify your vote.
Jay, I.
Adam, I.
Bart, aye.
Lisa, aye.
And David, I. Next is the big one. This is the Mount Mansfield Unified School District third quarter education taxes. So these are taxes that the town of Richmond collects, and then we pay the education tax to the Unified School District. So this is a purchase order in the amount of, and I have to do my Austin Powers, $1,893,626.22. So can I have a motion to approve purchase order 4869?
This is Bart, so moved.
Thank you, Bard. Do we have a second?
Adam, second.
Thank you, Adam. Any further discussion? So Josh, these are actual taxes, not estimated?
This is our, I believe it's our actual tax. bill,
Okay,
yes.
so no, last time we did this, it was estimated.
Well, so I think usually, I believe the first payment every year, they don't always have their final bill ready, but they make you pay.
Right.
Even though they'll give you an invoice and they'll hit you with a penalty if you don't pay.
Yeah.
So we estimate it, and then, yeah, the last payment of the year, we usually catch up on that
True it up.
adjustment.
Okay. Any further discussion?
Just one question, is the tax bill about the same each time or exactly the same?
No, it goes up every year.
Don't forget to vote tomorrow.
Didn't say that right, but yeah.
Oh, you mean each quarter? Yes. I think each quarter we try to keep, I think it's about the same each quarter
Okay.
for that fiscal year.
Okay,
Yes.
so Bonnie just going, what the heck?
No, I think, I mean, that first quarter one though, it's odd, like they don't give you a bill because they haven't figured it out yet. And if
They
you
still have to
pay,
pay.
if
Yeah,
you
but
pay
before they
late,
know, they
there's a
don't.
penalty.
Yeah.
So I think Connie estimates it based on the last year's payment at that time.
Yeah, that's close. And then that's
It's
what
usually-
screws it up.
Usually close, then we screw it up, yeah, so.
So this is money that we're collecting, but we're not spending. We're collecting it with the tax payments, but it's for the education tax.
Yeah. That.
Yeah.
Mhm. Did you guys vote?
No.
Okay.
Any further discussion before asking for a vote? Okay. So please identify yourself and signify your vote.
Jay, I.
Adam, I.
Bart, I.
Lisa, I.
And David, I.
Right, and before you get too deep into the
Warrants?
into the warrants, we are going to pull the electronic warrant from town center to general fund. As I was reviewing these this afternoon,
Oh. that's a good note.
yeah, I sent a couple emails today, sorry for the late emails.
Oh, that's all right.
So there was a change in this fiscal year where library rentals are now going, so we used to receive that money as revenue, it went into a revenue line. Now, in this fiscal year, that money is going directly into the town center line. So some of it still got booked accidentally into the revenue line. So part of this warrant was to reverse that. And one line looked like it did, but the next line looked like it didn't. And Connie wanted some more time to review and make sure that we're doing it right. So I'm gonna pull that warrant out. So when you approve the warrants, I won't hand this one to you to sign. And the other one was, and this is a matter of like $5. It's kind of ridiculous, but I want to make sure we have the right payment going over to Richmond Home Supply. Let me pull the invoices here. Warrant general. Okay, so on. So this line here was Richmond Home Supply for $17.98. And this actually gets a little complicated because it goes back to the last meeting where Linda basically bought 2 air fresheners, exchanged one, but they charged her for a third. And then charged her the wrong price for a toilet air freshener. They charged her for caulk, not the toilet freshener. So that went from $2 to $11. She tried to sort it out. I looked at it. We sat down, we sorted it out. So that we don't owe them $17.98. We actually owe them $11.99.
There's like
It's like,
$250 worth of man hours. in there.
I was just thinking the same thing, yeah.
yeah, but if we didn't do it, it was just gonna keep
Just to be
moving.
clear, I also buy Soho Home Supply and I have the same issue all the time.
Yeah, so.
Trigger for people.
So we're gonna modify this, and since we already said that I hand modified it, so I put that down to $11.99 and adjusted the total. Yes, it is all over $3, but we've all seen better off dead, and I want my $2.
I want like
$2.
This would have been cheaper to throw it out. Yeah.
So there you go.
I'm not gonna quote any lines from that movie while the camera's going.
No, that's the only safe line to quote, and we're gonna leave it at that. And if you just want to approve the warrant
Shame.
as modified, unless there's other questions.
I'll touch it.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I move, we approve the warrants as presented and explained.
Thank you, Lisa.
Is Bart, I will second that.
Thank you, Bart. Motion made by Lisa and seconded by Bart. Any further discussion? Aaron wants to know if we were going to add another item to discuss a fire station event.
A what now?
Oh, yes.
Oh, they're having their.
Remember,
Oh, yes.
what's the date of that event? The 27th?
Coin drop?
You had said.
No, at
dinner,
the
it's
Windjammer.
Hmm?
Oh, the fire department thing.
But
April 27th, 5 p.m. Windjammer, Richmond Fire Department event. We got an email about it. I just thought we'd mention it, and at least one or more of us, in my opinion, should attend.
I was hoping to go. Jerry said we were all welcome.
I'd like to go.
Like to do. Maybe all of us will go.
Yeah, I mean, he said the more the better.
Feels like a conflict I might have to bow out.
I don't know.
Yeah, you can't
Don't
go.
make any- Firefighters don't make any decisions. or
Police
talk
will be
about
so
business.
sad.
The most conflicted of all, I think. So,
Think you're
it'd be
fine.
nice to everybody. Or-
All right, we still need a vote on the,
On the warrants, I know. Okay, yeah, so we'll touch on that. So yes, you're right, Joe, Jay. So calling the motion to approve the warrants to a vote, please identify yourself and signify your vote.
this is Jay, and I'd just like to add, this is Jay, I vote aye, and I'd also like to add, head that way really fast. If something gets in your way, turn. That's a better off dead quote, sorry.
Oh.
Oh.
I thought you were gonna bring up the next one.
I opened up. a Pandora's
aye.
box and it even
Bart, aye.
opened up.
Lisa, aye.
David, I.
A lot going on right now.
Okay, so we've done the minutes, we've done the purchase orders, we've done the warrants. Items for next agenda. So ARPA spending will come back. I think we should put an agenda item on for follow-up on the Eclipse. Also an update on the park committees, Browns Court, the recreation easement, Port-a-Potty versus flushable toilet discussion.
Question, is the surveyor gonna bring up some information or provide some info on his findings? I mean, the paper trail? that
Probably yes, but
Yeah.
we should certainly talk about that, review
Maybe
that.
Gotten in hand?
Yeah, and I think our next thing to come back to the board with is sort of the draft easement. And if we have that ready by next
Yeah.
week time, I think we'll bring that back. If we
Yeah,
don't,
we've got all
I
the
don't
parts
know.
to talk about.
And if we don't, I don't know, there's much more to talk about until we have that draft. And yeah, the surveyor, Chris, does amazing work. So I'm sure he's got a lot of good notes he can share with the attorney and save the attorney lots of time.
Almost good.
Also the Phoenix Rising for the Town Center Committee.
Yeah, that should probably be up front, and I think get a certain spotlight on it, maybe even a special front porch forum posting. Because we're looking to re-energize it with presumably a combination of people from the former committee and
Yeah.
other people who may want to come forward.
Yeah, we need some of the naysayers there, whoever they are, they don't want to reveal.
And we should
themselves.
touch on the solicitation of input for the options for the intersection of
Yes.
Cochran Road, Thompson Road,
I get a reminder of that date.
Bridge Street, and Huntington Road. Anything else?
That should probably go up near the front as well, right?
Yeah,
Well, that would just be a reminder that we're gonna talk about it on May 6th.
right.
But we
Yeah.
could also give some more front porch forum reminders to that too.
For the recreation summit, is that on us to warn and do all that stuff, or is that gonna be on the recreation? committee?
That'll be, I'll take care of that.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. We can put a reminder on that too, though. Might as well.
sure.
Yeah,
One
just a
sentence.
couple of reminders.
Anything else for the next agenda?
So,
We're gonna, I mean, just so you know, we're gonna have the hearing for the change to the municipal parks ordinance for overnight camping. So that'll be
Right.
on that meeting. I think there's a couple other things that have already come along, but as you know, we'll add 20 things between now and then and
Try to keep you guys here until 11.
we'll have some fun. Okay. And then the next one, maybe my memo explained it well enough. It's a fairly minor change. If you don't want to go into executive session, we don't have to. It's really just a small change to what we're allowed to talk about with this, but we can go in certainly to talk about it, but if everybody's like, no, I get it, then we don't have to.
Well, don't we have two items to discuss?
No, so this is just the agreement that you all agreed to at the last meeting with the police union. And that's all public, so that basically the end of that agreement talks about the terms of this temporary agreement shall not be regarded as status quo after its expiration. And its terms, the party shall not agree. Sorry, the end of that one says, and the party shall agree not to attempt to rely on this or cite this temporary agreement as support for proposal, demand, or request for future bargaining. The union wanted to make some changes to that. It was a fairly minor change, which we could go into executive session to discuss that change. The change was written by our attorney after the union looked at it.
Comforting.
Yeah, it's just basically says that, no, we can talk about this in future negotiating sessions. We can go back and say, well, we did do this in the past. The way it was initially worded made it sound like you couldn't even cite it, but you can't say to them, well, you agreed to it then, or they can't say to us, you agreed to it then, now you have to agree to it. That's really.
I think this is really housekeeping.
Yeah, that's how I view it as well. But I wanted, if you guys want to go in and talk more, we can, but I think it's pretty simple.
That pretty well sums it up.
If you need us to, but.
I don't need you to. You
I'm
did the
good
hard
without
work
it.
last-
What was that, Jay?
He's good.
I'm good
without
with,
it.
I'm fine.
So then there is a motion that
I'm ready.
you got it.
I move to
You got it.
rescind approval of the memorandum of agreement between the New England Police Benevolent Association Incorporated, Local 415, and the Town of Richmond regarding starting pay rate for newly hired police officers that was approved by the Select Board on March 18th, 2024, and to replace it with the version of the memorandum of agreement between the New England Police Benevolent Association Incorporated, Local 415, and the Town of Richmond as presented on April 1st, 2024.
Adam, second.
Thank you, Bart. Motion made by Bart Hill, seconded by Adam Wood. Any further discussion? Hearing none, calling the motion to a vote. Please identify yourself and signify your vote.
J.I.
Adam, I. Bart, I.
Lisa, I.
And David, I. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Any-
I
Yes.
move we adjourn.
Thank you, Jay.
This is Bart, I
Thank you,
second
Jay.
that.
Thank you, Bart. Motion is for adjournment at 9:58 PM. Calling the motion to a vote, please identify yourself and signify your vote.
J.I.
Adam, I.
Bart, I.
Lisa, I.
And David, I. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks. See y'all if I ever come back.
That would be.
Take care, Jay. Have fun.
See ya.